Hey creepy crew, just a quick ask. Most of you aren't subscribed yet. Subscribing helps the channel grow and makes the content even better. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Like the video, hit the bell, and leave a comment where you're listening from. Now, let's jump in. I worked morning shifts as a barista and usually scrolled Tinder during lunch, sitting near the donut counter with my apron half off. It was something casual to kill time. Most guys were either holding fish or flexing at the gym. But then there was Alex. His profile looked different. Old Ford trucks, bonfires, some grainy shots of foggy roads and diner signs that looked like they hadn't lit up in years. He had that scruffy, low-effort look, but not fake. We started chatting about this half-collapsed burger joint on Highway 12 that apparently still made fries in peanut oil, and how we both liked those old trucker playlist compilations you can find on YouTube. 3 days later, he suggested dinner at a family-run steakhouse just past the industrial park, claiming he was finishing a photo shoot nearby. I usually drove myself to meetups, just felt safer that way. But my hatchback had been at the mechanics since Monday with a busted radiator. So when Alex offered to swing by and pick me up, I hesitated but said yes. My roommates were half laughing, half serious when they told me to snap a photo of his license plate. I actually did it. Texted a picture of his gray Dodge Ram to our group chat. It was around 6:15 when he pulled up at the curb outside our building. He stepped out in a denim jacket, hair messy like he didn't try but somehow still looked presentable. He didn't say much, just opened the passenger door for me and waited. Inside the truck, it smelled like new leather mixed with strong coffee. There was a reusable cup in the holder, still warm, and his camera bag sat neatly behind the seat. The radio played some old country tune, barely loud enough to hear. We didn't talk much at first. I remember the heater clicked softly while we waited at red lights. It felt fine, normal. Nothing off. At the steakhouse, he ordered cornbread for both of us without asking. Said something like, "They bake it fresh every hour," and the waitress smiled like she knew him. We talked a bit more. Movies, places we'd driven through. He seemed calm, maybe a little too rehearsed, like he'd said these things before. I kept stirring my cola with the straw and nodding, trying not to seem on edge. After we finished, he pulled out his phone and said he knew a shortcut back that skipped the river bridge traffic. I glanced out the window. The sky had gone dim, heavy clouds pressing down, and the parking lot filled with trucks, most of them hauling coolers and gear from the lake. Back in the truck, I buckled my seatbelt as he tapped something into the GPS. He switched it to some off-road mode I hadn't seen before. The screen blinked, and the arrow pointed away from the main road. We passed the last city light near a slow-turning traffic signal. From there, the streets narrowed. Trees started crowding both sides, tall pines that looked thicker the deeper we went. Street lamps disappeared behind us, one by one, until it was just the dull glow of the dashboard. I checked my phone. The chat was open, and someone had just sent a sticker, a fox grinning with a wink. Then the signal cut. Just no service. I put the phone down and kept my hand near it, trying not to seem like I was watching his every move. The road curved again, and the pavement cracked into gravel. It didn't seem like a shortcut anymore, more like a hunting trail. The truck rattled slightly as it climbed a small hill, trees now pushing in so close they scraped the side mirrors. "I think we should turn around," I said, keeping my tone light. "I've got work in the morning, and my shift buddies are waiting up." He laughed, low and short, not friendly. Then he pressed the lock button on his side, and I heard the doors click shut. "Relax," he said. "You'll love the soundtrack of nature." A few more miles in, the road narrowed into a set of ruts filled with standing water. The pickup bounced hard over each dip. My seatbelt dug into my collarbone with every jolt. I kept one hand tight around the strap and tried to come up with some light topic. Something harmless. Weather, music, even small talk about work. Anything that didn't feel like pressure. Alex turned the radio down to a low hum and started talking about how he used to run away into the woods as a kid. Said he hated the yelling, the slammed doors. His voice wasn't angry, just flat. Like he'd told this story 100 times. But with every mile, his tone changed. He dropped the friendly edge. Words got slower, more deliberate. He wasn't just reminiscing. He was watching me, waiting to see how I'd respond. Outside the window, a metal sign flashed past. It was bent, hanging off a post. Road closed ahead. I opened my mouth to ask, but he drove straight past the turnoff without even slowing down. "I'm not feeling well," I said finally. I gripped the dash and turned toward him. "I get migraines sometimes. Can you pull over?" He didn't look at me, just kept both hands on the wheel and tapped the gas a little harder. "There's a spot by the lake," he said. "Flat ground. Few more minutes." My hands were sweating now. The cabin felt smaller than before. I slid my thumb under the seatbelt and gently pushed up on the latch, careful not to make a sound. It clicked loose, but I kept it draped across my chest like it was still buckled. The truck slowed on a turn where the tires struggled to grip soft sand. It skidded just enough that he eased off the gas. That's when I reached for the door handle and threw it open. Cold air rushed in, and I hit the ground hard on my side. My elbow scraped gravel, but I didn't stop. I bolted into the nearest break in the tree line, stumbling through weeds and low branches. They slapped my face and tangled around my shoes, but I didn't look back, just ran. The engine noise behind me dropped away, muffled by trees. Then his voice, louder, sharper than before, cut through the dark. "Hey! Hey!" Not a question. A threat. I didn't stop, just pushed harder through the brush until I could barely hear anything but my own breath. My boots were soaked and heavy, but I kept going. 5, maybe 6 minutes later, I broke out onto a wide dirt road. Not paved, but wider than anything we'd been on. A pair of headlights approached, bouncing gently over the uneven ground. I ran into the beam and waved both arms like a maniac. A large truck braked hard in front of me. The driver leaned out, middle-aged, bearded, cautious. I barely got the words out. "Please. I need to get back to town. Someone picked me up and I jumped out. Please, just drive." He looked at me a second longer, then nodded. Passed me a steel thermos with one hand and flicked on his hazard lights. As I climbed into the cab, he checked his mirrors quickly. "That his truck?" he asked. I glanced back. Nothing behind us, just trees swallowing the road again. "No," I said. "Not yet." He hit the gas, and the wheels kicked up loose dirt as we pulled away. With every yard, the black road opened back up, and the night air started to change. I could finally smell wet pavement instead of pine and engine fumes. By morning, I was sitting in the police station, hands shaking slightly as I flipped through photos on my phone, trying to recreate the drive from memory. I showed them where we'd left the steakhouse, traced the path through the back roads as best I could. They asked for the plate number, and I gave it to them. The vehicle was registered to a rental company. He'd never returned it. Payments had stopped 2 weeks ago. My roommates sent texts all night. When I finally read them, I saw that Alex's account was gone. Wiped clean. No matches, no message history. The last thing he sent me before disappearing? A blank text. No words. Just the notification bubble, like he wanted me to see he was still there. I deleted Tinder, locked all my profiles, told my boss I was taking the rest of the week and rode a bus out to my sister's place. Even after I left, I kept jumping at every engine outside the window. Every truck that passed felt like him circling back, trying again. Some nights, I still see headlights in my rear view that match the ones from that Ram. Just a reflection, probably. My neighbor drives a minivan, but the lights sit high, and for a second, I can't breathe. The cops told me he's probably on the move. These types don't stay put. They drift, test boundaries, wait until someone says yes too easily. I don't know where he is now, but I know better than to take the short way home. Some roads stretch out longer than you think, and not all of them are meant to be driven twice. I came back to my small apartment after a long shift at the office and sat on the edge of my bed, still in my coat, just scrolling without much thought. That's when I saw Mark's profile freeze mid-swipe. He looked normal enough, plain hoodie, messy hair, holding a record in one hand and a saucepan in the other like he couldn't decide between music and food. He wrote that he was a self-taught engineer and that he collected vinyls. Said he could make fresh ravioli from scratch and described the smell of garlic and tomatoes simmering on his stove. I don't know why that caught me, but it did. The photos were clean, no weird filters or gym poses, and his texts weren't aggressive or pushy like most. He asked if I liked old jazz. We ended up talking for 3 days straight, trading obscure band names and challenging each other to name weirder tracks. By the third night, I was laughing more than usual. He had this weird obsession with Italian food, said he learned to cook from his grandma when he was 11. I joked that if he was lying, I'd call him out immediately. He sent a picture of handmade pasta from 2 months ago. Not impressive in quality, but definitely real. He said he wanted to cook dinner for me. No restaurants, just food like he used to eat as a kid. I hesitated. I usually didn't say yes to home invites, not on the first meet. But he sent his address, a townhouse in a quiet neighborhood just outside the city. Seemed legit. I told my best friend where I'd be, sent her the exact address, and promised to send a voice note every 30 minutes. I got there just after 8. The streets were almost empty. Only a couple of parked cars and the orange glow from the street lamps. The townhouse had a little porch, wooden railing, small potted plants lined up like someone cared, but not too much. The smell hit me before I even rang the bell. Basil, garlic, maybe butter. Mark opened the door almost immediately. He looked exactly like his photos. Tall, dark sweater with an old rock band logo I couldn't place. He smiled, stepped aside, and motioned me in. The place was small but neat. Wooden floors, clean kitchen, shelves stacked with records. A soft hissing sound played in the background. It was a vinyl. Old Miles Davis, I think. He told me to make myself comfortable while he finished the sauce. The kitchen was open to the living room, and I could see steam rising from a pot. There was already a plate of appetizers on the table. Cheese, olives, bread. Nothing fancy, but all fresh. We sat down at this carved wooden table that looked too nice for a rental place. He poured me a glass of white wine, something dry and crisp. He talked about the way he folds his pasta dough, how long he lets it rest. I asked him where he bought the record player. He said he found it at a yard sale and fixed it up himself. I laughed at one of his stories. Something about messing up a recipe and setting off his smoke detector at 2 a.m. I sent my friend a quick text. All good so far. Dinner was good. Not amazing, but honest. Pasta had a soft bite, and the sauce was thick and peppery. We ate slow, and he kept the conversation easy. At one point, he asked why I didn't have people over to my place. I said I liked my space, that I didn't trust easily. He nodded, but then asked again a few minutes later. You don't invite anyone over? Not even friends? I said no, not really. He didn't say anything right after, just got up and went into the kitchen. It wasn't anything dramatic. He picked up a dishcloth, wiped something off the counter, then walked back slowly. But I noticed his hand move near the door. It was small, just a motion and a quiet click. A soft, metallic sound, like a lock sliding into place. He acted like nothing happened. I didn't ask. I told myself maybe he was locking the door because it was late. That made sense, right? I helped him clear the dishes. The kitchen smelled sweeter now. He was making some kind of dessert, letting it cool on the counter. I kept glancing at the door. I didn't see a bolt or a chain before, but now there was this small new latch up top, pushed in. I tried not to focus on it. I leaned near the window instead. The air inside felt warm, heavy. I tried to slide the window open just a bit, just enough to feel the outside. But when I moved the latch, it didn't budge. I pressed harder. Still nothing. My thumb ran along the edge and felt a tiny metal rod, some kind of internal bolt. It was screwed in. I didn't say anything. I walked back to the table and stacked the plates. He watched me, smiling, like nothing was wrong. Mark wasn't acting like before. His voice got quieter, almost flat, and sometimes he'd just stop mid-sentence, like he was listening to something. Not outside. He was listening to me, to how I moved, when I shifted my weight, when I reached for my glass. I told him I had to get up early, tried to keep it casual, like it was just a normal night winding down. He didn't argue, didn't laugh, just smiled a bit, but there was nothing warm in it. "The night's still long," he said, not looking at me. He put on another record. Louder this time. Heavy bass, enough that the windows lightly shook in their frames. It filled the whole room, thick and dull. Any little sound, footsteps, the door creaking, would be hidden under that. I watched him cross the room, slowly, not like before. He noticed where my eyes landed. The door. That's when he stepped closer, reached out, and took my wrist. Not rough, but firm. Too firm. "You know," he said, still not letting go, "it's not safe to be walking around this late." I forced a smile, tried to joke. "That's what taxis are for, right?" But he didn't laugh. His grip stayed the same. I could feel my pulse jumping under his fingers. Over his shoulder, I saw it. A heavy metal candlestick. Vintage style, shaped like a vinyl record standing upright. It sat near the edge of the table, partly in shadow, easy to miss unless you were looking for it. I didn't know if I could use it, but I knew I might have to. Something snapped into place in my mind. The moment I walked in, the danger had already started. It wasn't the bolt on the window or the click at the door. It was when he told me he cooked the way his grandma did, and I laughed like it was sweet. While I was talking about music, he was already setting the stage. I had to time it right. No screaming, no sudden moves. Just one clean chance. When he turned to the shelf to grab another record, I told him I wanted more wine. I moved toward the table. My legs felt weirdly light, like they belonged to someone else. I picked up the candlestick with both hands, slowly, pretending to inspect it. My fingers slipped a bit on the cold metal, but I kept my grip steady. He walked back, record in one hand, asking something about my past relationships. His voice had this weird whistle to it, like his tongue didn't move the right way anymore. I couldn't tell if he noticed what I was holding. Maybe he thought I was still just playing along. Maybe he didn't care. I swung the candlestick. Not full force. I didn't even aim to hurt him, just to shock him. And it worked. He shouted, more surprise than pain, and let go of my wrist. I didn't wait. I ran. The bolt on the door didn't want to move at first. My hands were shaking too much. I had to try twice. The little chain fell off with a clink. I yanked the door open and stumbled out, barefoot. I left my shoes right there in his hallway, next to the mat. The porch steps were icy and rough. I almost slipped but caught myself. I sprinted toward the street, my toes slapping the pavement, arms waving at the first headlights I saw. A car, old sedan, slowing down at the intersection. I didn't care who it was. I stepped in front of it. The guy behind the wheel looked confused for half a second, then unlocked the door. I climbed in without asking. He didn't say much, just looked once in the mirror and started driving toward the brighter streets. I couldn't stop shaking. Tears just came out without warning. I tried to explain, said something about being locked in, about not feeling safe. He didn't interrupt, just nodded a couple of times and drove faster. My phone had died in the house, but once it turned back on, it lit up with missed calls and messages. My friend had been trying to reach me for over an hour. I texted her one word: alive. Later that night, I gave the police the address, the messages, everything. They went to the townhouse, but it was sealed. He was gone. The front door had new reinforcements on the inside. Extra locks, a bar, even padding. Like he'd been planning to keep someone in. After that, I moved. New place with a locked building entrance, security cameras in the lobby, neighbors who notice things. I don't meet people from apps unless it's public. And if I hand someone my phone, I keep my eye on it. The candlestick, the one shaped like a record, it ended up being part of the investigation. They gave it back to me eventually. It sits on a shelf in my new place. Not as a souvenir, just as a reminder. Sometimes when it's really quiet, I still hear that soft crackle of vinyl in my head. That sound used to feel cozy, nostalgic. Now it just reminds me of how slow traps can close around you. How gentle everything seems, until the lock clicks. I don't make ravioli anymore, but I've learned a different recipe. If someone insists on locking the door for you, calls it just being careful. If the windows don't open, if the music's too loud, those aren't quirks. That's not charm. That's the sound of someone turning freedom into a cage. Ever since I moved into a studio on the 3rd floor, my little ritual became evening walks to grab a cappuccino at the coffee shop around the corner. It wasn't fancy, but the barista remembered my name, and the place always smelled like cinnamon. That's where I matched with Daniel. He was an intern at a local publishing house, said he couldn't stop noticing the typo in caramel on the chalkboard menu. I laughed. We chatted for a while, nothing intense. After a few days, we agreed to meet up in person, at the same coffee shop, so we wouldn't have to wander around looking for each other. On the day of the date, he showed up on time wearing a checkered shirt, hair a bit messy like he'd run a hand through it too many times. He brought up classic thriller novels, asked me what I thought about Gillian Flynn's pacing. I mentioned I preferred slower build-ups, and he looked disappointed. We disagreed about everything, even how to grind beans for a French press. He said, "You don't need a burr grinder, that's marketing," and I half smiled. The date wasn't bad, but it was clear we were too different. After about 40 minutes, I told him I had a deadline to hit. He nodded, didn't look too bothered. We parted ways without awkwardness, no weird vibe. Just one of those quick meetings that don't go anywhere. I felt lighter walking home. The air was cool, and I had a good podcast in my ears. I honestly didn't think about him again that night. If anything, I felt glad I didn't waste too much time. But I was wrong to think it ended there. That evening, when I stepped outside to throw some trash away, I noticed a white sedan parked across the street from my building. It looked exactly like the one Daniel had loaded his backpack into after our coffee shop meetup. I paused for a second, trying to remember if he mentioned the make or model. Probably not. I told myself it was just a coincidence. White sedans are everywhere, and I wasn't about to start imagining things. I went back upstairs, made some tea, and tried to focus on work. Around midnight, just as I was turning off the lights and pulling my blanket over me, I heard the faint sound of keys jingling right below my window. My studio faced the alley next to the building entrance, and the sound echoed weirdly up the walls. I stayed still, listening. A soft clink, like someone dropping keys and picking them back up. Then nothing. After a few minutes, I figured it was one of the neighbors coming home late. The walls were thin. I tried not to think about it. The next morning, I followed my usual routine. Threw on a hoodie, grabbed my reusable cup, and headed back to the coffee shop. I stepped inside and saw him. Daniel. He was standing by the counter, not even ordering, just staring at the pastry display like he was making a choice he didn't care about. When he noticed me, he looked surprised, but not like someone who bumped into an old friend, more like someone trying to seem casual. I felt my pulse pick up, but I smiled like everything was normal. I walked past him without stopping, just waved briefly. "Hey," I said, kept it moving. He didn't say anything back. I glanced through the glass after stepping outside. He was still standing there, now facing the door, just watching me. Not smiling, just watching. At the intersection, I waited for the light to change. The street was quiet, no early morning rush yet. That's when I heard the soft hum of a car engine behind me. A white sedan pulled up and stopped at the curb just before the crosswalk. I didn't look directly, but saw the shape of the vehicle in the corner of my eye. Same model. Same small dent above the front wheel. I kept walking. Halfway down the next block, I heard it again, the low idle of the engine. I turned slightly and saw the car roll forward. Not fast, just enough to keep up with my pace. It stayed about half a block behind me. No honking, no sudden movements, just following. I crossed the next street without looking back and picked up speed. My shoes slapped the pavement louder with each step. The car kept its distance but didn't turn off. It followed. The engine stayed low, barely louder than the wind. My keys were clenched in my fist. I didn't stop. I didn't look back. The same pattern repeated the whole week. First, I saw him sitting on the lower floor of the library while I worked on my laptop. Then, another day, he was near the metro station entrance, pretending to scroll his phone. He never approached me, just looked up occasionally, always when I was passing by. I started saving receipts with timestamps to keep track of where I'd been, trying to prove to myself I wasn't imagining this. My friend Lena offered her couch, said I should stay over until it stopped, but I told her I needed actual proof. Without it, no one would do anything. So I started collecting it. I wrote down the dates and times I saw him or his car. I photographed the white sedan parked by a hydrant outside my building one night, zooming in on the dent by the wheel. Each time it looked like he was just there, not moving, not breaking any laws, just waiting. One night, around 1 a.m., I was about to sleep when I heard it. Soft tapping on my front door. Not knocks. More like the scrape of fingers or claws, slow and steady. I stood frozen by the bed. The hallway light was off, and through the peephole, I saw no one. But I knew. He was there. Standing in the dark. I sat on the floor with my phone in my hand until the sun came up. Every creak in the wall sounded like someone breathing. Every minute of silence felt heavier. I stopped going out after dark and began ordering groceries online. I even kept my blinds closed during the day. Still, the car showed up. Once, when I left early to avoid the morning crowd, the sedan cut across 2 rows of parked vehicles to block me at the parking lot exit. I hit the brakes, grabbed my phone, and started recording immediately. He got out of the car. Daniel. Calm, smiling, like we ran into each other by chance. "Can we talk for just a minute?" he asked. His voice was low, but not angry. I told him I was late and didn't have time. He stepped closer, demanding to know why I was acting cold. In his right hand was a small folding keychain knife, open just enough to show the blade. He wasn't swinging it, but it gleamed under the sun. My hand shook, but I held my phone up. "You're being recorded," I said, loud and clear. He stopped, looked down, whispered, "You broke something that gave me hope." His voice cracked. Before I could respond, a man in a delivery van behind us honked and shouted, "Move your cars!" I used the moment, threw the gear in drive and sped out, not looking back until I was halfway down the block. In the rearview mirror, I saw him standing alone, surrounded by the flickers of cigarette butts in the gutter. The next day, I handed over the video and my list of sightings to the local officer. I had dates, times, and clear photos. They took it seriously. A restraining order was filed, and for the first time in weeks, the white sedan was gone. I didn't see it parked outside, didn't hear keys at night. No more sightings near the metro or coffee shop. But that didn't mean it was over. Now, before stepping outside, I always scan the street, my eyes tracing every white car. Even from a distance, headlights feel like they're watching me. At work, my coworkers joke that I've gone full detective. I smile, but I still sit with my back to the wall. I don't drink coffee from that corner place anymore. I changed my route, took buses that looped through different parts of the city, just to stay unpredictable. His profile is gone now, deleted or blocked, I don't know. He hasn't messaged me, no emails, but I get calls from private numbers a few times a week. I never answer, block them without hesitation. Once I almost picked up by reflex, and since then, I keep my phone on silent when I sleep. Sometimes, just as I'm about to drift off, I think I hear those taps on the door again. Faint, rhythmic, like nails on wood. I wake up breathless, grabbing my phone like a weapon. Nothing's there, but I always check the peephole anyway. Real danger doesn't need to chase you loud. It can drive slow. It can wait quietly, just out of sight, for the moment you stop paying attention. The moment I realized I couldn't hear the clinking of glasses clearly, I knew something was wrong. The Friday jazz bar near the old train station had always been my safe space to drown out the week's noise. It was tucked into a half-basement with low ceilings, faded red booths, and soft yellow bulbs that gave everything a warm tint. I'd been there enough times to know the rhythm of the place, the exact pitch of the door chime, the way the bar stools creaked when you sat. That night, Mike had messaged me on the app, said he'd be there early, chatting with the bartender like always. I remembered him saying once he'd studied law, that he knew the bartender from some case or whatever. His profile was pretty standard. Button-up shirts, clean smile, lots of group photos. The plan sounded safe enough. I wasn't looking for much, just a drink, maybe a laugh, nothing that would stretch into the night. I threw on a loose dress and slipped my ID and some cash into a small clutch. No keys, no bag, just what I needed. My friends knew where I was going. I told them it was a short date, just one cocktail, and they gave the usual thumbs up. One of them said she'd check in around 9, just in case. The bar felt exactly how I expected. Soft hum of voices, warm smell of wood and gin, the sound of a sax in the corner, low and steady. Mike was at the edge of the counter, leaning in, half laughing with the bartender about some baseball stat. He waved me over like we'd met a dozen times already. He was easy to talk to, had that thing where he didn't fill silences too much. Said something about jury duty being a joke. That made me snort into my hand. He ordered a spritz, and I asked for a grapefruit highball. I always go for that one first. Cold, a bit bitter, keeps me grounded. The first sip hit sharp, just like it should. Mike was still mid-story about some guy in court who pretended to faint. I laughed, nodded, leaned in a little. The drink loosened my tongue more than I expected. 10 minutes turned into 20 without me realizing. I remember laughing harder than I should have at something not even that funny. My skin started to feel warm, sticky, even though it wasn't crowded or hot. I figured it was because I hadn't eaten. I glanced at the menu, pointed at a small plate, but Mike touched my hand lightly and said, not to worry, he'd already ordered snacks. Should be out in a sec, he said, giving the bartender a quick look. The food came, some toasted bread with cheese and olives, and I reached for it, trying to focus on chewing, grounding myself. While he was talking about jury duty again, he nudged my glass a bit closer to himself, said something about not letting the ice water it down. He was smiling, watching the game on the TV behind the bar, his hand resting casually near both our drinks. I didn't think much of it until he slid mine back toward me, glass slightly turned. I took another sip and the flavor was off. Not bad, just different. Like it had sat too long, or maybe picked up something from the bar. I swallowed anyway. That's when the room started to feel slower. Not spinning exactly, but the kind of slow like moving underwater. The saxophone in the corner was dull now. The chatter of the bar turned into a low fuzz. I blinked hard and tried to follow what Mike was saying, but his voice stretched out, words thick and syrupy. "You good?" he asked, his face too close to mine. His voice didn't match his mouth. I forced a nod and said I needed the bathroom. He said, "Sure," dragging the word longer than it needed to be. I stood up fast, too fast. My knees buckled a bit. I steadied myself on the back of the stool and walked, or at least tried to walk, toward the hallway near the restrooms. My steps felt like they echoed, even though the bar wasn't that big. Each light along the hallway buzzed just slightly, but together it felt like a swarm. I kept one hand along the wall, pressing my clutch to my chest. I wasn't dizzy. It wasn't drunk. I knew that much. I'd had enough nights out to know the difference. Whatever it was in that second drink. And I was running out of time. I reached the door of the stall and locked it behind me. I locked the stall door and fumbled with my phone. My hands weren't steady, and instead of dialing, I somehow opened the camera and took a blurry photo of the white tiled wall in front of me. The sound of the shutter echoed like a gunshot. I tried again, pressing the call icon for my closest friend, but the screen just slipped under my finger. Nothing went through. My pulse pounded in my ears. The fluorescent light above blinked once. Then I saw the emergency contact number posted near the sink. Security. I tapped it. 1 ring. 2. A gruff voice picked up. I said the words slowly, clearly. "Bathroom. I need help. I think he put something in my drink." "Stay where you are," the voice replied. "I'm coming." Outside the stall, I could hear Mike's voice float in, not panicked, but casual. "Hey, did she say where she was going?" he asked the bartender. I pressed my ear against the door. Footsteps moved past, then paused. My lipstick had smudged onto my chin. I wiped it, but my hand didn't listen well. It trembled like it belonged to someone else. My knees gave a small shake. The phone was still clutched tight in my other hand, camera still open. The blurry wall photo stared back at me. The knob rattled. A second later, a soft knock. "Security," a man's voice said. I unlocked the door. His eyes scanned me quickly. I showed him the photo, pointed toward the bar. "Mike," I said. "Gray shirt, talking to the bartender." He nodded, moved quickly down the hall. I followed slowly. The air outside the stall felt heavier. My legs felt like rope. When I stepped out into the main bar area, the mood had changed. The security guard had a firm grip on Mike's elbow, holding him just enough to keep him in place. The bartender, Max, I remembered, was pointing at something behind the counter and yelling, "He had a dropper! I saw him use a dropper!" People had stopped their conversations. Some stood, others shrank back. I saw a couple leave their seats and edge away from the scene. Mike said nothing. His face had gone pale. His eyes flicked around like he was looking for someone to vouch for him. I sank onto a stool near the bar, clutching the edge, trying not to slide off. My knees didn't want to hold me up anymore. I heard someone call the cops. Someone else said ambulance. It didn't take long. Maybe 10 minutes, maybe less. Police officers came in first, 2 of them, fast but not panicked. They moved straight toward Mike and the guard. The taller one started asking questions. The other looked toward me. I raised my hands slightly. My skin was cold and damp. Mike didn't resist. He didn't speak. He kept his eyes on the floor. The bartender handed over the dropper and a napkin. "I didn't know for sure," he said, "but I saw him lean over the glass. I thought maybe I was just imagining it." Then she went to the bathroom and didn't come back. The ambulance team came next, moving past everyone and directly into the kitchen. A woman in blue gloves took my arm, found a vein, and started an IV. The cold fluid ran down into my wrist. "You're going to be okay," she said softly. "We just need to flush your system." I didn't answer. I looked past her shoulder, at the far wall, where a neon sign flickered. Jazz had started playing again, softly, like nothing had happened. I wasn't afraid anymore. Just hollow. I kept thinking about the dumb joke Mike made earlier about courtroom snacks and how I laughed too hard. The officer crouched beside me with a clipboard and a pen. "Can you tell me what happened, start to finish?" I did. Not in a rush, not with emotion. Just the facts. The bartender backed it up. The dropper was bagged. They took both glasses too. Mike still hadn't said a word when they put him in the back of the cruiser. The bar returned to its normal volume. Conversations picked up slowly, like people were trying to pretend nothing serious had happened. I stayed until the IV was finished. The paramedic nodded and removed it gently. "You're lucky," she said. "Whatever it was, you didn't get much." She handed me a cup of water. I sipped it without thinking. The cold slid down like gravel. Eventually, I stood. The bar stool creaked as I pushed it in. Max came over, resting a hand lightly on the counter. "I'm real sorry," he said. I nodded, unsure what to say. The music was still playing. The bartender turned back to a customer like it was just another night. Tests confirmed later there had been something foreign in my blood. Low dosage, but clear. They didn't tell me the name, just that it was enough to incapacitate if I'd finished the drink. I hadn't. The quick call saved me. 2 weeks later, I got a call. They'd found 2 more complaints tied to Mike, one in another bar, one from a co-worker. A case was building. I bought a pepper spray keychain. I started checking every glass I'm handed, never taking my eyes off it. Even now, I won't accept a drink unless I see it poured. And only from Max, if I'm at that bar. I still go there sometimes. I sit near the corner now, not at the bar. The music feels different. Not bad, just distant. I order the same drink, grapefruit highball. Max always gives me a nod when he hands it over, like a quiet check-in. When the ice clinks against the glass, I think of that night. I think of the tile in the bathroom, the photo I took by mistake. It's my phone background now. White squares with faint gray lines. Just tile. Just a wall. But every time I unlock my screen, I remember. Not fear. Not trauma. Just instinct. The cold voice that told me something was wrong. That photo. That moment. It saved my life. Now the bitterness in my drink doesn't come from the grapefruit. It comes from memory. And it's the taste that keeps me alive. It was a slow Sunday evening. I was scrolling through profiles, not really expecting anything, and then I saw Ashley. Her main picture showed a tattoo on her forearm. An old-school lantern design, black and shaded, not the trendy kind. That caught my attention. Her bio was short, but funny. Something about craft beer, indie playlists, and hating pineapple on pizza. We started chatting, joked about the best stouts to pair with chili, and compared our local breweries. Nothing deep, just light stuff. Easy. We kept messaging for a couple days. She was quick with replies, casual, not too intense. Then on the third day, she asked if I wanted to meet. Said there was a park just a few blocks from her place. Big, open space, decent walking paths, good for sitting around with a drink. I like open-air spots more than loud bars, so I said sure. I swung by the store on my way and picked up 2 tall cans of IPA. Warm day, no wind, just some cloud cover rolling in by late afternoon. Ashley was already there when I arrived. Sitting on a bench, back against the wooden slats, arms stretched out. She wore a dark gray hoodie and black jeans, earbuds looped around her fingers. She stood up when she saw me, gave a half smile, and sat back down as I handed her a can. We bumped them together with a little clang, both of us laughing about how metal cans make everything sound fancier than it is. We talked about bike infrastructure for a bit. She was annoyed about the new parking racks that took up 2 car spaces near her street. I mentioned the city's plan to add more protected lanes, and we went off about urban planning, which sounds boring, but she had a sharp way of putting things. Her voice was a bit low, kind of flat, like someone used to thinking before they speak. She didn't fidget much, just sipped, talked, looked straight ahead mostly. Kids were still running around near the swings when we got there, but most of them had left by the time the sun started dipping. Shadows were getting longer, and the park was thinning out. You could hear more distant traffic than people now. Ashley started talking about her dog growing up, some kind of stubborn shepherd mix that always escaped through gaps in the fence. And I mentioned mine, a beagle that ate drywall once. Conversation was smooth, no awkward pauses. She told me she wanted to start a podcast, something about local businesses, food trucks, street interviews. I said that sounded like a lot of work, but cool. She shrugged and said, "Yeah, maybe. I get tired of listening more than talking." That was the first thing she said that made me pause a bit. Not in a bad way. Just made me notice her tone. A little off, maybe tired. But again, nothing that stood out enough to dwell on. It was around then I noticed the 2 guys on the main path. They were walking toward the street, not near us, maybe 50 yards away. Just 2 regular-looking dudes in hoodies and ball caps. One taller than the other, kind of lanky. The shorter one had a noticeable limp. I wouldn't have thought anything of it, but I caught a look pass between them and Ashley. Real quick. Not a smile or wave, just a glance. Ashley didn't react. Kept talking like she didn't see them. I brushed it off. It's a city park. People look at each other. Still, it stuck in my head. She was laughing about how she still couldn't get used to the local accent. She moved here from the Midwest a year ago, and how she once misunderstood a guy at a bakery who said "bap" instead of "bun." It was the way she told it, sort of overpronouncing the vowels to mock herself. She kept going, but her shoulders were tighter, less relaxed than before. Her eyes flicked toward the street every few seconds. The neon sign of the burger place across the road came on, red and blue glow catching in the trees. That's when I looked again and noticed the shorter guy had circled back. The taller one was still on the path, leaning against a tree, pretending to mess with his phone. The short one was pacing a bit. I looked at Ashley. She had stopped talking for a second and saw me looking. Her mouth moved slightly like she was going to say something, then didn't. Instead, she said, "You into indie rock?" The topic shift was sharp, like she was redirecting. She named a few bands I didn't know. I answered with something generic about liking old Arctic Monkeys albums, and she nodded, tapping her can with her thumb. I could feel her scanning the area. It wasn't open panic, just alert. I checked my phone. It was already after 8. I mentioned I had to help a friend move furniture in the morning, just to break the tension. She nodded like she understood. Then she said, "Let's walk to the cherry blossom path. It's nice this time of day." I stood up. She tossed her can in the bin and started walking before I could say anything else. I followed. The gravel crunched under our shoes. The lights from the city skyline were just starting to show between the tree branches. We never made it to the cherry blossom path. I heard footsteps behind us, fast and heavy, and before I could turn around, something slammed into my shoulder hard enough to drop me to the ground. I landed on my side, scraped my hand. My can rolled into the dirt. When I looked up, Ashley had already stepped aside, holding my beer. She wasn't shocked, wasn't frozen. Just stood there like she was watching something she'd seen before. The two men closed in. One of them, the tall one, stood over me and barked, "Phone, wallet." The shorter guy started patting my jacket pockets without waiting for me to move. I tried to push myself up, but got a quick, sharp kick to the side. Not hard enough to break anything, just enough to make the point. I didn't fight back. I stayed down, breathing shallow. Ashley's voice came from a few steps away. "Just give them your stuff." Flat tone, no urgency, no fear. It was like she was reading instructions aloud. I looked at her. She didn't look back. I handed over my phone and wallet without a word. My license was in there. Work ID, debit, and credit cards. I thought about asking for the cards back, but didn't. The shorter guy flipped through it all, pocketed the cash, tossed the empty wallet on the ground. Then both of them backed away, keeping eyes on me. Ashley handed one of them my phone. He didn't thank her. They disappeared between the trees as the last bit of daylight faded. No running, just a quiet retreat. I was left lying in the dirt, hand bleeding a bit, side aching, not sure how long to wait before moving again. Eventually, I stood up. My shoulder throbbed. I brushed off the dirt and leaves, picked up the useless wallet. There was no one around. The park was empty. I limped toward the nearest street light. It felt too bright after the shadows. Near a hot dog cart at the corner, I asked the vendor if I could use his phone. He hesitated, looking me over, then passed it to me without a word. I called the police. They came faster than I expected. Maybe 10 minutes. 2 officers. I told them everything I remembered, leaving out how obvious the setup seemed in hindsight. They asked about Ashley. I gave them what I could: description, app name, where we met. One officer wrote everything down while the other asked the same questions twice. Back home, the first thing I did was check my phone messages from my laptop. Her profile was gone. The entire chat history wiped. Like she'd never been there. I sat there staring at the empty screen for a while, replaying every message, trying to hear warning signs that weren't there. Next day, my bank called. Someone had tried to withdraw cash with my card early in the morning. They blocked the transaction, froze the account. I had to explain everything again to someone over the phone, feeling more embarrassed than angry. They canceled the card, issued a new one. My driver's license and work ID were still out there. I couldn't look at the park the same after that. Even in daylight, the benches looked staged, like props. It hit me how fast it all happened. Their plan was simple: lure, hit, grab, leave. No mess, no noise. The worst part wasn't even the pain. It was realizing that the whole date had been a script. I'd followed it step by step. About a week later, I got a call from a detective. Said they'd reviewed some surveillance from nearby streets. The two suspects were on camera walking toward the park, but their hoods were up, faces turned away. Couldn't get clear IDs. Ashley wasn't seen. Probably stayed out of sight until I arrived. I had to go replace my documents. Spent the whole morning at government offices, waiting in lines. Got a temporary license, then applied for replacements. It was routine, but every time someone asked why, I had to explain. Saying it out loud made it feel worse, like I'd walked straight into it. My bank sent me fraud alerts every other day for a while. Nothing serious, just attempts on the locked card. But every ping made my chest tighten. I started checking my accounts every night before bed, and again in the morning. I didn't buy a weapon. I signed up for boxing classes. Basic ones, beginner level, just to feel like I could react if something ever happened again. First few sessions were awkward. I couldn't hit the pads right, but it helped more than I thought. On my dating profile, I put a new picture. Just a plain headshot with a serious face. No jokes in the bio, no beers, no meetups in parks. If someone suggests an outdoor drink now, I say I prefer crowded bars. Somewhere with noise, people, exits. Benches make me uneasy now. I avoid them, especially if they're empty. The lantern tattoo doesn't symbolize anything cute anymore. If I ever see one like it again, I'll walk the other way. Trust doesn't break loudly. It slips, piece by piece, until you realize it's gone. I hadn't smiled at a message in months, but when Nick texted me, "Your muffins should be illegal," I couldn't help it. His profile looked normal. Bike race photos, some camping trips, and one picture in front of a fire station. I assumed he was a firefighter, or maybe just into that kind of stuff. He was clean-cut in a real way, no flashy clothes or filters. We chatted a bit over the week, nothing intense. He asked if I wanted to meet up, maybe grab something low-key, and I said sure. We met at this family-style place off 11th. Lots of booths, soft yellow lights, the kind of spot where people bring their kids after soccer practice. He was already at a booth when I got there, stood up when he saw me. Real polite. He didn't talk too much, but kept asking questions about my baking, my work, regular stuff. No red flags. He had this quiet, calm way about him. He didn't look at his phone once, just kept eye contact, nodded, laughed when something was supposed to be funny. When the check came, I reached for my purse and he said, "Let me get it. Gentleman move." Then smiled. It wasn't creepy. Not yet. We walked out together. His car was parked down the row. He offered to drive me home, said it was late and the buses weren't reliable. I said yes. I don't usually say yes to that kind of thing, but he'd been nothing but respectful. The drive was quiet. He had some old classic rock playing low, windows cracked open just a little. No weird detours, no small talk. Just drove. My street was dark, mostly families, sprinklers still running in some of the yards. The pavement shimmered. The water made the porch steps a little slick. He pulled into the curb and said, "I had a good time." I said thanks and went to unbuckle. He didn't lean in or anything. Just said, "You bake, you're funny, and you know how to pick a decent restaurant. Rare combo." I laughed politely, said goodnight, and stepped out. The air smelled like wet grass and concrete. He waited until I got to the sidewalk, then slowly pulled forward. I thought that was it. I walked toward my porch. The steps were damp and reflected the street lamp a bit. I just reached the first one when I heard his voice behind me, low and calm. "Do you think we'll do this again?" I turned around. He was standing by his car with the door open. I said, "I'm not sure. I didn't really feel a spark, but you seem like a good guy." He nodded once, like he understood. "Appreciate the honesty," he said, and closed the car door. I turned back and started climbing the steps. My hand was on the railing when I heard fast footsteps behind me. Not running, but close. Urgent. Then something slammed into my back. My knees hit the wood hard and I fell forward. My purse slipped off my shoulder and I grabbed the edge of the top step to keep from hitting my head. "You think this is a game?" he hissed behind me. I turned halfway and he struck me across the cheek. Open palm, but hard. I tasted metal instantly. I fumbled for my bag. My fingers scrambled through receipts, keys, and found the small canister clipped to the inside strap. I twisted it in my hand and sprayed without aiming. The pepper spray caught both of us in the cloud. He screamed and staggered back, hands over his face. "Bitch," he said, coughing and stumbling toward the car. The motion-activated floodlight on my neighbor's garage snapped on, casting both of us in bright white. A window creaked open and someone shouted, "I called the cops." I called 911 with shaking fingers, crouched under the glare of the floodlight. The phone nearly slipped from my grip as I read the address out loud. Nick was blindly groping at his car door, coughing and cursing. His coordination was shot from the spray. He finally yanked it open and dropped into the seat, still gasping. I thought he might drive straight into the neighbor's trash bins, but he reversed too fast and swerved away, red tail lights jerking around the corner. My neighbor, Mr. Keating, came across the lawn in slippers, holding his phone in one hand and a flashlight in the other. "You all right?" he asked. I nodded, barely. He guided me toward the steps again, careful not to touch me too much. I sat on the edge, hunched over, hands still clutching the pepper spray like it was the only thing keeping me upright. We waited together. The patrol car showed up within minutes. Flashing red and blue reflected off the wet asphalt and windows. 2 officers got out. One walked to Keating while the other crouched in front of me. I gave them Nick's first name, said I didn't know his last, but that he'd picked me up from the diner on West 11th. Mr. Keating pointed down the street and described the car. Dark gray sedan, dent on the left bumper, temporary tag on the back. They radioed it in and took a short statement. Inside, I pressed a frozen bag of peas to my cheek. It throbbed like it had its own heartbeat. In the bathroom mirror, the red handprint glowed against my skin, ugly and sharp. I stared at it longer than I meant to. The police left after making sure I didn't need an ambulance. One gave me a case number and told me someone would follow up. The porch lights were still on, the water from the sprinklers drying into faint streaks. I didn't want to sit on those steps again. A week later, they found him. A gas station a few blocks down had a dash cam aimed at the pump lanes, and it caught his plate when he stopped for fuel after leaving my place. They brought him in. He denied everything. Said I invited him over, that the pepper spray was unprovoked. He tried to flip the story, called himself the victim. But my doorbell cam had recorded the whole approach. His voice, his movements, the moment of impact. The audio was grainy, but clear enough. he couldn't explain that away. I gave them the footage on a USB and watched his face while they played it in court later. The case dragged. Paperwork, testimony, more hearings than I expected. I passed those same porch steps every day. I started avoiding them, using the side door when I could. Eventually, I bought a motion sensor light and a big outdoor camera, the kind with a wide-angle lens and audio capture. I installed them myself. The wires snaked down the siding, and I didn't care that they looked obvious. He took a deal in the end, pled guilty to misdemeanor assault, got a suspended sentence, mandatory anger management, and probation. No jail, but the record stayed. The night that plea was finalized, I came home and locked the front door. The deadbolt clicked into place like punctuation. This time, I didn't flinch. I repainted the steps in early spring. Soft gray, different than before. The old stains were gone, and the boards didn't creak as much. It helped, in a quiet way. The neighbors noticed. Some asked about it, and I just said I wanted a change. I didn't explain. People started asking me to go out again. Friends, co-workers, even a neighbor tried to introduce me to his cousin who wasn't crazy, promise. I always laughed, told them I was good for now. Most nights I stayed home, baking in the quiet. Muffins mostly. The kitchen smelled like cinnamon and butter. No one asked questions in my own kitchen. I bought a new pepper spray. Bigger canister. Attached it to my bag with a steel clip instead of the flimsy fabric loop. Mr. Keating, always mowing his lawn or fixing something on his porch, started joking that I should teach self-defense classes from the steps. "Start with a good aim," he said once. I smiled for real that time. The new motion lights flash on sometimes. Usually it's just the neighbor's cat, a black and white thing that likes to nap on the warm wood. I don't mind it. The light hits its eyes and it blinks like it owns the place. It doesn't feel like a wound anymore. The porch is still mine. Being safe isn't just about locks and lights. It's about having the right to say no, and the ability to back it up when someone doesn't listen. That night didn't take that from me. It reminded me why it matters. It was raining hard that Tuesday. One of those gray, closed-in days where you don't even bother putting on real clothes because you know you're not going outside. I was in sweatpants, drinking lukewarm coffee, just swiping through Tinder. Most of it was the usual: mirror selfies, gym bros, badly lit bar photos. But then I saw Nathan. His profile stood out. Not just because he was good-looking, though he was. It was the photos of food that got me. Plates of pasta, close-ups of roasted vegetables, a perfectly seared steak. The captions talked about farmers markets and seasonal ingredients. It didn't feel showy. It felt like he actually cooked and cared about it. We matched that afternoon, talked all evening. By Friday, we had our first date, a cafe that served house-made focaccia and didn't let you use your phone at the table. It was easy, natural. The second date, he invited me to his place. Said he was making his signature lasagna and had a bottle of red he wanted to open. I didn't feel any red flags. I told my friend Emma the address just in case, and she joked about me getting kidnapped, like friends do. I ordered a cab, showed up around 6. His apartment was in a quiet part of town, second floor of a 3-story building, nothing flashy. I noticed the smell before anything else. Fresh paint. Faint, but definitely there. The hallway walls had painter's tape still clinging to the corners. Inside, though, it was clean. Open-plan kitchen and living room. Warm light from a few standing lamps. A record player in the corner was spinning something soft, instrumental. He had one of those open shelves with spices and cookbooks, and the table was already set for 2. The scent of tomatoes and garlic filled the air. Not the kind that comes from a jar, but the slow-cooked kind, like someone actually simmered them for hours. He wore a dark apron and offered me wine. I took it. We stood in the kitchen while he rolled out sheets of pasta. He talked about flour ratios and how his grandmother used to make dough without measuring anything. The whole evening felt strangely calm. No rushing, no weird silences. Just him cooking and talking, and me watching, sipping wine. I actually thought to myself, this might be the best date I've ever been on. At one point, he showed me how the pasta should drape over the back of a chair to dry. He made it a joke, dangling the floppy sheet like it was some magic trick. I laughed. He laughed too, wiping his hands on a towel. I offered to grab some napkins while he finished layering the dish. He pointed to the hallway cabinet and told me it should be the second drawer. I stepped into the hallway. There was a door slightly open to my left. The cabinet was straight ahead, but something about the light coming from that door caught my eye. Not bright. More like the soft glow of a night lamp. I pushed it open a bit more, maybe 3 inches. It was a bedroom. At first glance, it was neat. Bed made, no clothes on the floor. But my eyes locked on the chair near the window. On it was a small handbag, silver, glittery, the kind you'd only use for parties or dates. Next to it, face up on the windowsill, was an ID. I don't know why I walked over to check it. Maybe because I'd seen that face before. It was her. The girl from the missing posters. Sarah Donnelly. 28. Disappeared last month after a work function. Her face was everywhere for about a week. News stories, social media, taped on telephone poles. And now her ID was here. I felt a tight pull in my chest. Not panic, not yet. Just everything going completely, painfully still. I didn't touch anything. I stepped back, closed the door as silently as I could, and walked toward the cabinet. My hands weren't shaking, but it felt like I had to think through every step. Open drawer, pull out napkins, walk back. He looked up when I returned, smiling at first. Find them? I smiled back, holding up my empty hands. None there, I said casually. His smile faded just slightly. Not a full frown, just enough for me to catch it. Like he knew I'd taken longer than I should have. He looked at my face a little too long. Then went back to checking the oven. I sat at the table. He poured more wine into my glass without asking. I didn't touch it. My phone was still in my bag, zipped. I told myself not to rush. Every move had to be normal. I had to leave. But not fast. Not suddenly. I just needed an excuse. I started going through the steps in my head. Stand up. Say you forgot something. Say you feel sick. Say anything. He turned to look at me again. Not smiling now. Just watching. I told him I was allergic to something. Maybe the Parmesan, I wasn't sure. And that I should probably head home just in case. He looked disappointed, tilted his head a bit like he was trying to read me, but didn't argue. I can call you a taxi, he said, already pulling his phone out. While he looked down at the screen, I slipped my phone from my bag, swiped it open, and quickly snapped a photo of the ID I'd seen. I found the pic in the gallery, hit share, and sent it to Emma with just one word. Call. I kept my hands steady. He was walking to the coat rack now, reaching for my jacket. He handed it to me, and I noticed his palm was damp. Not sweat from the kitchen. Colder. He gave a quick glance down the hallway, toward the bedroom. Just enough to check. Just enough to make my chest tighten again. Sorry the night got cut short, he said, forcing a chuckle. No, thank you for dinner, I replied, putting on my coat, still smiling. It smelled amazing. He walked me down to the main door. I stepped outside and waved at the street like I saw the cab already, even though nothing was there yet. He stayed in the doorway, watching me. I gave a small wave and started walking down the sidewalk. Only when I turned the corner did I actually pull up a rideshare app and call a car. I kept walking until I found a better lit corner, checked my messages. Emma had replied with just a, and then a calling now. The taxi pulled up. I got in. The driver was an older guy, maybe late 50s. He looked at me through the rearview mirror and asked, "You okay?" I hesitated. Then I said, "Can you stop at a 24-hour store or something first?" He nodded and we drove a few blocks. The store's neon lights buzzed above the glass doors. I sat in the back seat and searched the name I'd seen on the ID. Sarah Donnelly. There it was. Articles, forums, Reddit threads. Missing since March 3rd. Last seen leaving a party in the West Side. Phone never recovered. No new leads. I called the police. Gave them the address. Described the ID. The bag. Said I was just there. That the man still might be. They took it seriously. Asked if I could wait nearby. I told the driver what was happening. He nodded once, quiet, then pulled the car to the side street across from the apartment block. We sat there, engine idling. Rain hit the windshield, steady and sharp. I stared at the building, waiting. 2 squad cars arrived. No sirens. Just the wash of red and blue lights flashing against the wet pavement. The officers went inside. Time dragged. I counted 10 minutes, maybe 12. Then I saw a movement in the hallway window. Nathan stepped out. His silhouette paused, then disappeared again. Moments later, the front doors opened and police walked out with someone between them. The doors closed behind them like nothing had happened. The building looked the same, quiet, ordinary, but something had broken. I stayed in the car until the police waved the driver forward. I gave a statement. They took my phone, uploaded the photo I'd sent to Emma, said I'd probably be contacted again for follow-up. I nodded. My legs were stiff when I got out. The rain hadn't stopped. Later, they told me the room held multiple personal belongings that matched Sarah's. Clothes, jewelry, a shoe. Nathan said he bought them at a flea market, that he thought the ID was fake. Said he liked collecting lost items. Nothing illegal about that, he claimed. But it wasn't just 1 or 2 things, and the bag wasn't dusty or buried. It was on a chair, sitting like it had just been set down. The investigation's still going. They're checking for fingerprints, talking to neighbors, digging into his history. No charges yet. But I keep thinking about the way he looked when he saw me come back from the hallway. That brief flicker of calculation. Like he knew something had shifted. The sparkle of that bag won't leave my head. That glitter. The kind of thing a girl wears when she wants to feel noticed. And now, it's evidence. I haven't played records since. The sound makes my skin crawl. I packed mine into a box and slid them under the bed. Every time I smell tomato sauce, my stomach turns. Cooking dates don't feel romantic anymore. Emma sent me a link last week, an article called "New Clue in Sarah Donnelly Case." The photo showed a street view of Nathan's building, but if you zoomed in, you could see me, blurry, standing beside the police tape. Some nights I wake up thinking I hear the record player turning, or that scent, heavy and sweet, is drifting through the apartment again. It always takes a second to remember I'm home, that the door's locked. The bag with sequins still hasn't been claimed. Edward and I had been texting on and off for about a month. Nothing serious, just enough to keep the mood light after work. He had this dry kind of humor, always poking fun at himself, and honestly, it helped. That Friday, the office was tense. Deadlines stacked, calls non-stop. but chatting with him between tasks felt like a pressure valve. Around 6, he suggested watching an old comedy, said he had it on a flash drive and missed the feeling of just laughing at something dumb. I didn't even think twice. I said yes and sent him the location. My place isn't easy to find. It's in a dead-end street that most GPS apps hesitate to send you through. There's this narrow alley with bad lighting, and you have to take 2 turns off the main road. I gave Edward exact instructions, told him to ignore the GPS and just follow what I wrote. He didn't complain. I kind of liked that. Before he arrived, I wiped down the kitchen counter, swept the floor, and lit one of those cinnamon-scented candles I keep in the drawer for when someone comes over. I brewed some tea, black with cinnamon sticks, and left it in a thermos. By the time he knocked, the place was quiet, warm, and smelled like baked apples even though I hadn't cooked. Edward had one of those reusable grocery bags with him. He brought popcorn, 2 types, one salty, one caramel, and that flash drive with a faded sticker on it that just said classic. He looked normal. Gray hoodie, jeans, clean sneakers. He smiled when I opened the door but didn't say much. Just raised the bag like a peace offering. We sat on the couch with a blanket over our legs, the movie playing on low volume. It was some British comedy from the late 90s, fast-talking actors and slapstick jokes. We barely watched it. We started talking about travel and music and somehow about work policies. It didn't matter. At one point, I laughed too loud and he leaned in to kiss me. It wasn't awkward, just quiet, slow. We kissed for a while, then just sat close, shoulders touching. No rush. By midnight, he stood up, stretched, and said he should head home. He didn't linger. I walked him out, told him to be careful through the alley. He nodded, got into his car, and reversed carefully into the dark. I went back in, rinsed the cups, dumped the popcorn bag, and shut the kitchen window. I remember pushing the latch down. I remember doing that because it sticks, and you have to really press it in. I brushed my teeth, checked that the door was locked, and went to bed. Outside, it was dead quiet. No wind, no cars. I remember thinking the silence felt heavier than usual, like the air was just sitting on everything. But I didn't think too hard about it. Somewhere deep in the night, I heard a pop, sharp and quick, like when a heavy branch hits a wall. I sat up immediately, my heart racing for no reason. I looked at the curtain, and it was still. I waited, listening. Nothing followed. I figured maybe it was a branch from the tree that bends near the fence. I laid back, but I couldn't ignore it. I got up and walked into the kitchen just to check. The latch on the window was down, not partially, fully down, flush with the frame. I stood there looking at it, trying to remember if I might have forgotten to lock it. But no, I'd pressed it shut. I was sure. Still, I told myself maybe I thought I did it but didn't actually do it. Maybe I only meant to press it in but got distracted. I clicked it up again, pressed it hard this time. The metal clicked back into place. I stood there a second longer, then turned and walked back to the bedroom. As I stepped into the hallway, I heard a soft sound from behind. Not a knock or a footstep, more like a click, a small one, like when you close a cabinet door slowly and it taps shut. I froze. Then I remembered my neighbor has this cat. Big black one that always sneaks through the fence gaps. Maybe it jumped on the outdoor bin and nudged something. That had to be it. I didn't even look through the window. I just went to my bedside table and clicked on the nightlight. Dim orange glow spread across the floor. No sounds. No movement. I sat down on the bed and listened. Silence. Not even the usual hum of pipes. Eventually, I laid back and let my eyes close. The room was still. Nothing moved. I woke up to the sound of a floorboard creaking. At first, I thought it was a dream. But then it came again. Not loud, but sharp enough to pull me out of that half-sleep where you can still believe in excuses. I opened my eyes and stared at the ceiling, not moving. The hallway was dark. I hadn't left any lights on. I slid out from under the blanket and moved to the bedroom door. It was only slightly ajar. Through the narrow gap, I saw a shadow shift. Someone was standing in the hallway, backlit just enough from the light over the stove in the kitchen. He wasn't moving quickly, just standing, like he was listening for something. It was Edward. He didn't knock. The locks had been shut. I checked them. I knew I locked the door. I backed away slowly, keeping quiet, closed the door without a sound, and grabbed my phone. The corner of the bed jabbed my knee, but I didn't flinch. I dialed 911 with shaky fingers and told them someone was in my home. I whispered everything: my name, address, that he was still inside. The dispatcher kept her voice low, calm, asked where I was, told me to stay hidden. I dragged the laundry bin in front of the door. It was flimsy, plastic, but better than nothing. I pressed my back against the closet and listened. I could hear him in the living room. Not stomping or shouting, just movement. Light, careful rummaging, like he was looking for something. The dispatcher said officers were on my street already. I asked her to repeat it. She did. I turned off my phone screen and held my breath. Outside, through the cracks of the curtain, blue light blinked against the wall. I didn't dare peek. Then a voice shouted, "Police!" Everything exploded at once. Heavy boots on wood. A crash. Someone shouting commands. A loud thump like someone had fallen or been pushed. Then silence. Just the low murmur of voices and a door creaking open. A knock came at my bedroom. "Ma'am, it's safe. You can open the door now." I moved the bin, opened the door, and stepped into the hallway. An officer stood there, flashlight down, another behind him with gloves on. They were walking Edward out, hands behind his back. His face was turned toward the floor. His jacket had tiny glass bits stuck to it. I don't know why I noticed that. They said he got in through the kitchen window. He never locked the latch after opening it the first time. Left it ready. They showed me the small tear in the mesh screen. In his bag, they found a photo of an envelope. My name, my address. It looked like it was taken from a table. Mine, probably, from when he first visited. I answered their questions, showed them the text messages, pointed out the path he would have taken through the alley. All while the tea on the counter went cold. They took the flash drive too, said it might be relevant. After they left, I barely touched anything in the apartment for hours. The next week, I installed a second latch on the kitchen window, bought a metal strike plate, and reinforced the front door frame. My neighbor, the one with the cat, came over and helped mount a basic alarm system. Nothing fancy, just sensors on the doors and windows that beep when they open. Enough to hear, enough to know. The flash drive stayed with the police as evidence. I didn't ask for it back. I stopped dating for a while, paused the apps, deleted old messages. Every night before bed, I check the kitchen latch, even if I haven't opened the window all day. I even changed the mailbox to one with a coded lock instead of just a slot. No more envelopes sitting out in the open. Sometimes I still hear creaks at night, just quick ones. The cat from next door still jumps the fence and walks across the roof. He sets off the motion sensor sometimes, but that's all. The light from a police cruiser flashing on the ceiling that night. It doesn't go away. I see it sometimes when I close my eyes. It reminds me that the real danger doesn't always knock. Sometimes it smiles, brings popcorn, and waits for you to fall asleep before coming back in. It started during my time off in August. I'd been working from home for months, barely seeing anyone, and vacation season had me feeling isolated. Everyone was gone somewhere. Spain, Turkey, the Dasha. Out of boredom and maybe a little loneliness, I became more active on a forum for outdoor sports and energy food discussions. That's where I met Oliver. His username was something basic, like Moto Ollie. He messaged me first, replying to my comment about freeze-dried meals. We chatted about hiking, energy bars, and his long solo trips across Europe on his motorcycle. His replies were detailed, like he actually knew what he was talking about. Routes in the Alps, which protein bars didn't taste like glue, how to avoid shady hostels. It was casual, nothing weird. The chat moved to Telegram. I didn't think twice. His messages were fast but thoughtful. He asked me if I ever traveled alone. I said no, but it was something I wanted to try. He said it was liberating. His messages got more personal after a few days. Fun facts about him, what brand of coffee he liked, what playlists he listened to during his rides. I shared back, little things. Where I grew up, my job, some filtered selfies, the kind people post on Instagram stories with dog ears or blurry lights. He replied with pictures of his bike near cliffs, his helmet on a bench with a sunset behind it, a blurry campsite. He seemed genuine, said he had a week off and was passing through my city. Let's meet next Friday, coffee and a ride around town? I said yes, why not? We made loose plans. Then, out of nowhere, he stopped replying. It was like he vanished. 2 days, then 3. I checked our chat once or twice, thinking maybe he lost his phone or something. It didn't bother me at first. Then I got the email. It was a plain message. No subject line. Just a file attached and one sentence in the body. Check the attachment. The sender address wasn't familiar. I clicked. A PDF opened. My photos. The filtered selfies I'd sent him, but now with a red watermark across each one. Pay or share. The font was mechanical, not bold, just cold. Under the photos, another line in bold. You know the price, 48 hours. At first I thought it was a scam, some kind of mistake. Then I scrolled down. There was a second message in the PDF. Don't waste time, just pay. It was signed. Oliver. My throat locked. It wasn't a public leak, not yet, just a threat. But it was my face. I checked the chat. He was still offline. I tried to message him. Nothing. I took screenshots of everything. The chat, his profile, the email, the PDF. Then I searched online how to report blackmail. It led me to the local cybercrime unit. Their response was quick, like they'd seen this sort of thing a lot. The officer I spoke to was calm. He told me not to pay, no matter what. Keep all evidence. Don't delete anything. Save every message, screenshot, email. It's likely he's done this before. We'll track the metadata. Just don't engage him further, he said. I didn't sleep that night. I kept refreshing my inbox, my DMs, my Instagram messages. Nothing came in. But I stayed alert, checking every new notification, expecting the worst. The officer told me to stay quiet. No replies, no comments, no reactions. Just collect. Every message Oliver sent after that was colder than the last. TikTok. Then another. A screenshot of my Facebook friend list. Then Instagram followers. Then my LinkedIn connections. He didn't say he'd message them, but he didn't have to. I knew what it meant. I changed every password I had. 2-factor authentication. Backup codes printed and stuffed in a drawer. I downloaded activity logs, saved timestamps, and copied headers from every email. The night felt endless. My phone was face down, but I couldn't help flipping it over every few minutes. Each buzz made my chest tighten. I ignored the final warning message at 4:17 a.m. I didn't open it, just screenshotted the preview. No emails came after that. I checked with 3 close friends the next morning, casually asking if they'd seen anything weird. All of them said no. Nothing had been sent out. Not yet. I was one step ahead, but barely. Around noon, I got a call. Same officer. He sounded more focused this time, speaking fast. "We need about 1 more hour. We're tracking the IP trail from his last connection." I nodded even though he couldn't see me. I was gripping a mug of tea, fingers twitching from the caffeine. The bitter taste wasn't helping. Then, mid-call, another email hit my inbox. Just one word. "Sorry." I read it twice, then opened it again to be sure. No threats, no screenshots. Just that. I told the officer. He asked me not to respond and said he'd call back soon. 20 minutes later, he did. "We've detained someone," he said. "The provider logs helped. The device was used this morning. We've confirmed the data." Oliver wasn't real. Or rather, the guy behind the messages wasn't who I thought. The real Oliver, if there ever was one, had his profile lifted from a travel blog years ago. Same pictures, same motorcycle shots, even the campsite photo was copied. The man who contacted me was using a VPN, but slipped once. That was enough. They caught him. I felt a wave of relief, not joy, just the pressure lifting a little. I closed my laptop. I turned off my phone for a few hours, but I knew better than to relax. The internet doesn't forget. The screenshots, the PDF, the chat logs, they were still sitting in folders. I wasn't the only one. The officer mentioned they'd seen similar cases. Mine just had more evidence. Now I read privacy policies like their instruction manuals. Even my microwave got a second look before I plugged it into Wi-Fi. I don't send photos to strangers anymore. Doesn't matter how harmless it seems. My friends joke that I've become a digital hygiene guru. Maybe I have. They ask me what VPN I use, which password manager, how to clear metadata from images. There's a trial coming. I'll testify. I agreed to it the moment they asked. I want it on record. Every send button now carries weight. I think about where my data goes. I think about how many people saw my pictures. Maybe none. Maybe he was bluffing. But he still crossed the line. Those pixels, once a threat, are now my weapon. They're filed in a folder marked evidence. They're on a USB stick the officer gave me. Not to scare me, but to remind me that they helped. They speak louder than fear. Pixels meant to manipulate me now sit in a courtroom drive. What he tried to use against me became what brought him down. I first noticed Jake in one of the campus group chats. He stood out right away. He was active, always quick with tech advice, confident without being annoying. His profile photo looked clean and sharp, the kind of guy who probably had a solid IT internship lined up and a decent setup in his dorm. Eventually, we moved the conversation over to a different app. There, his photos looked even better. Stylish clothes, skyline selfies, casual cafe shots. He had that effortless kind of confidence people try to fake online, but his seemed real. His texts were easygoing and smart, and he didn't push too hard. After a few days of chatting, he asked if I wanted to do a late-night city tour, said it was his favorite way to de-stress. I hesitated, but he added that he'd pick me up right by the dorm and that we'd just cruise the main streets. He made it sound like nothing heavy. No bars, no parties, just city lights and good music. I agreed, but I wasn't stupid about it. Right before heading out, I sent my roommate my live location and said I'd ping her if anything felt off. It was already dark when I waited near the dorm gate. The walkway was still a bit busy with people heading out or coming back from the library. I stood close to the road but kept checking my phone. Around 10:20, a silver sedan rolled up. Not a bad car, not fancy either. The guy who stepped out wasn't the guy from the pictures. He looked at least 40. Not 30-ish like Jake had seemed. His clothes were similar, neutral jacket, clean jeans, but the age difference was obvious. He smiled, raised a hand like he expected me to smile back. "Hey, I know, I look a little different," he said right away. "Those pics are old. COVID aged me, I guess." He chuckled, but I didn't. He kept walking toward me, eyes scanning me fast, like confirming it was really me from the photos. I stood frozen. He stepped closer and motioned toward my backpack. "I'll carry that," he said, hand out. Like he expected I'd just pass it over. I didn't move. I just stared at him and said, "I think there's been a mistake." My voice came out quieter than I wanted, so I said it again, louder. He stopped but didn't step back. No mistake," he said, still smiling. "It's just me. Come on, don't be shy." He took another step, hands still out, trying to reach for my strap or arm. I wasn't sure. I stepped back fast, repeating, "No, this is wrong. You're not the person I was talking to." He frowned, dropped his hand slightly, but then moved toward me again, faster this time. He grabbed my elbow, not hard, but firm enough. "Let's just talk by the car," he said, voice lower now. I turned my head quickly. There were still students around, a small group walking by on the sidewalk just behind me. I raised my voice. "Let go of me." I didn't scream it, just said it firm and clear. Two of the students turned immediately. One was a guy holding a laptop bag, the other had headphones around her neck. The guy squinted, then walked a step closer. "Is everything all right?" he asked, looking directly at me, not the man. I didn't say anything right away, but my face must have said enough. The older man let go of my arm fast, took a small step back. His expression shifted quick. He looked annoyed now, but forced a calm face. He raised both hands like he was proving he wasn't a threat. "No problem," he said, trying to sound light. "Just a misunderstanding. We were supposed to meet, but I guess something got mixed up." He looked at the students, then at me, then back toward his car. "We can talk for a second, just by the car," he added, more quietly now. But the students weren't leaving. More people had slowed down near us. It was clear I wasn't walking anywhere with him. One of the other guys from the group stepped a little closer too, standing between us. Nobody said anything, but they were all watching him now. He looked around, realized this wasn't going to work. His whole posture changed. He turned, walked back to his car, and got in fast. No more words, no last glance. Just started the engine and pulled away. I took out my phone immediately and memorized the license plate. The campus security came over as soon as they saw a small crowd forming. One of the students had already called them. I told them what happened, trying to keep everything straight. I gave them the guy's name, or at least the one he used, and showed them the screenshots of our messages, the profile photos, and the license plate number. They called the police right away. The officers showed up fast, took my statement, and asked for anything I had: messages, call logs, timestamps. By the time I checked the app again, the profile was gone. Deleted or changed. Either way, it was like he vanished. I gave them everything I had, including the plate number, and a few hours later they called back saying the car was a rental. The rental office confirmed someone had picked it up 2 days earlier using temporary documents, nothing permanent. The name wasn't Jake, not even close. That night I didn't sleep much. My roommate stayed up with me. We watched some dumb sitcoms with canned laughter just to push the tension out of the air. I kept checking the window every few minutes. My live location was still running on my phone, even though I wasn't going anywhere. I turned off all dating apps, deleted most of them. I told myself it was just for a while, just until I felt better. But it didn't end there. A few days later, I got a message on my school email. It was from a taxi driver. At first, I almost deleted it. The subject line just said, "Urgent," about the car. He said he saw a post in one of the community forums where I'd shared the photo of the license plate and car make. He said the car looked exactly like one he drove a few nights before that. I messaged him back right away, and he responded within an hour. We set up a time to talk on the phone. He said a man had booked a ride a few days earlier, asking to be driven near the student dorms. Not to get out, just to drive slowly past the campus, especially around the housing areas. Said he was checking out the night scene. The driver thought it was weird, but not illegal, so he did the route. The man barely spoke after that, just kept staring out the window. When I asked if he could describe him, he said yes. White guy, short graying hair, average build, about 40, dark jacket, jeans, didn't smile much. Matched the guy I saw. I asked him if he'd be willing to talk to the police. He agreed without hesitation. Said the whole thing bothered him since it happened, and he'd been thinking about it ever since he saw my post. I gave his contact to the police. They followed up fast. A day later, they got back to me. The man had been picked up on a nearby station camera the same night he rented the car. Facial recognition matched him to a few open cases involving similar misunderstandings near other colleges. They didn't say much more, but the tone was serious. The thing that cracked it open, they said, was the payment method. He'd used a transit card for local buses and trains registered under a different name, but one the police had flagged in the past. That card placed him near several campuses over the last 2 months. Same timing, same pattern. The taxi driver, his name was Henry, had unknowingly helped identify a repeat offender. A week later, I met Henry in person. We picked a spot at a cafe just across from the library. Lots of foot traffic, glass walls, bright lights. I was nervous at first, but he was calm. Older, probably in his late 50s. Kind face, patient tone. He didn't ask a lot of questions, just said he was glad he could help. We sat there drinking coffee while students passed by outside, bundled in jackets, rushing to classes. It's weird how someone completely random can end up being part of your safety net. Since then, I started telling everyone I know one rule: video call before you meet. No exceptions. Doesn't matter how nice they seem or how many mutual interests you have. If they won't show their face, don't meet. It's a rule I didn't think I needed before, but now it's standard for me. Campus security updated their guidelines after what happened. They posted new flyers in the dorms, ran quick seminars, and added a line in the student welcome emails about always verifying rides and profiles. The dean's office even put out a reminder about personal safety. It wasn't just about me. They said this kind of thing had been showing up more in recent months. Henry became a bit of a local hero. The student newspaper did a piece on him, called him the unexpected watchdog. There was even a photo of him in his cab with a quote about trusting your gut. For me, things slowly went back to normal. I started walking to classes again without checking behind me every 10 steps. I uninstalled the panic alarm app I downloaded that night. I still don't use the dating apps the same way. If I ever download one again, it's with every setting maxed out, every chat scrutinized. And when a car pulls up now, any sedan with tinted windows, I wait. I check. I make sure the driver matches the profile photo exactly. I still carry pepper spray. Not because I expect to use it, but because I'd rather have it than not. Sometimes at night, when a car horn sounds from the street below, I freeze for just a second. That low, flat sound echoes through the alley beside the dorms, and I remember his voice, his hand on my arm. But I'm never alone. There's always someone nearby now, someone who might turn their head and ask, "Is everything okay?" I was 17, and I hated how everyone around me had someone. My best friend had this guy from her school who brought her lunch. Another girl in my class kept getting flowers at the front desk. I felt like the only one left out. So I downloaded Tinder. Said I was 19. I didn't think much of it. Just wanted to talk to someone who wasn't from school. Someone who didn't already know everything about me. His name was Thomas. 25. His photos looked clean. Normal. One with a dog, another with a hiking trail behind him, and one where he was at some kind of wedding, wearing a gray suit. His messages were polite, not pushy. He asked what kind of music I liked, and I sent him one of my playlists. He said he liked how mellow it was, that it reminded him of real summers. Then he asked what I wanted to do in life. I told him I wanted to be a designer. He said that was cool, and asked if I drew. I sent him a few sketches. He said I was talented. We talked like that for maybe a week. He didn't ask anything weird. No gross stuff. Just music, plans, jokes. He said I seemed mature for my age, and that he liked talking to me. He offered to meet, said he'd be around the shopping mall near my place, suggested we could walk around or get something to eat. I told him I'd think about it. I waited a day before replying. Said yes. Told my parents I was going to the movies with 2 of my classmates. They didn't ask more, just reminded me not to be late. I wore jeans, a long-sleeve top, and took a jacket just in case. No makeup, just lip gloss. I was nervous, but I figured he was being nice, not weird. He picked me up just after 7. The parking lot by the mall was mostly empty. He was already waiting, sitting in a dark blue SUV. Looked newer, clean. I opened the passenger door and climbed in. The inside smelled like one of those vanilla air fresheners. Not strong, just faint. He was smiling when I got in. Said I looked different than my photos, but in a good way. I smiled back, fastened the seatbelt. He had music playing low, some indie stuff I'd sent him. Said he thought I'd like it. He drove off slowly, turned out of the mall lot. I asked if we were going to the theater entrance. He looked at his phone, made a face, and said, "Crap, looks like the tickets are sold out. I should have booked earlier." I said it was fine. We could just walk around or grab a drink or something. He said there was a good cafe about 10 minutes away. Quiet, not crowded. I nodded. I didn't want to seem like a kid making a big deal out of nothing. We drove further, past the other side of town. Streets started thinning out. More warehouses, fewer stores. The lights outside got dimmer, more spaced out. He was talking about music again, but I stopped listening. Something felt off. The way he drove. No hesitation, like he knew exactly where he was going. I glanced at the phone mounted on his dashboard. The map wasn't leading to a cafe. The name on the route said industrial sector or something like that. His hand moved off the steering wheel and rested on my knee. It wasn't a hard grip, just his palm flat against my jeans. I looked at him, didn't say anything right away. He kept his eyes on the road, like he hadn't noticed what he'd done. I tried to shift my leg slightly, but he left his hand there. Just sat like that, fingers relaxed, like it was normal. The pit in my stomach got heavier. I looked at the door next. The lock was on. One of those automatic types. I reached for the handle to check, pulled slightly. Didn't open. He looked at me and gave this smile like he didn't understand why I was checking the door. "Just child locks," he said. then turned his eyes back to the road. "You okay?" I nodded, but my hands were cold now. I kept thinking about what my mom said once when she caught me walking home alone at night. Don't ignore that voice in your head. It's there to keep you alive. At the time, I laughed it off. Now it was screaming. I looked at the street signs. None were familiar, just numbers and warehouse names. I said, "I think I'm gonna throw up." He looked over, confused. I kept going. "Seriously, I feel really sick. Can you stop somewhere?" He didn't answer. Just adjusted his grip on the wheel and kept driving. I said it again, louder this time. "I'm gonna puke. Stop the car." He reached for the volume knob and turned the music up a bit, then said, without looking at me, "We're almost there." Tears were already building, but I kept my voice steady. I said I'd throw up all over the seat if he didn't stop. No reaction. I glanced at the road ahead. Finally, a red light. We slowed down. I scanned around fast. Across the intersection, near the corner, I saw a group of teens, maybe 3 or 4, on bikes. Looked around my age, backpacks, one of them with a speaker strapped to his bag. I banged my hand on the window. "Hey, help!" I shouted, as loud as I could. I smacked the glass again, yelling until they turned their heads. Thomas cursed and grabbed for my arm, but I twisted hard, slammed my shoulder into the door, and yanked the lock pin up. It clicked. I grabbed the handle and threw the door open. He tried to pull me back in, but I shoved myself sideways, feet scrambling, body half out. I hit the ground hard. One shoe came off. Asphalt scraped my leg, but I didn't stop. I crawled, then stood, waving my arms. The teens hesitated for a second, then rode over fast. I turned, saw Thomas still sitting in the SUV, then peeling away, tires screeching, door still half open. One of the guys asked if I was okay. I nodded, still breathing hard, hugging my arms. Another one said we should call someone. I asked for a phone, dialed my mom's number by heart. She picked up on the 3rd ring. I didn't say much, just told her where I was and to come quick. The boys offered to wait with me. One of them suggested we go inside the 24-hour cafe nearby. We sat at the back, near the coffee machines. One of the employees asked if we needed help, and the boys explained I'd jumped out of a car. They gave us water. I sat on the booth seat, legs still shaking. My phone kept buzzing. Mom, then unknown numbers. I didn't answer. A few minutes later, headlights outside. My mom ran in. She looked pale, hair tied back messily, coat half-zipped. She didn't yell, didn't even ask anything at first. Just pulled me into her arms and held me. I started crying then, not loud, just quietly while she kept her hand on my back. The teens stayed nearby, not sure if they should leave. My mom thanked them, over and over. When we got home, I told her everything. From the fake age, to the chatting, to the meetup. She didn't scream, didn't punish me, just listened. The next morning, we filed a report with the police. I gave them his photos, the chat logs, everything I remembered. They asked about the car, the route, where I'd jumped. I did my best. After that, my parents bought me a new phone, one with GPS tracking. It was part of the deal. We'd have a shared app, so they'd always know where I was. I didn't argue. Felt like a small price to pay. A week later, I wrote a post for our school blog. Not the usual gossip stuff. I wrote about what happened. I didn't name names or give too much detail. Just said that I'd lied about my age, met someone from an app, and things went very wrong. I ended the post with a warning. If your gut says something's off, listen. I didn't expect many people to care. But the comments surprised me. Dozens. Some kids said thank you. Others shared their own close calls. A couple of teachers even commented, anonymously, said it was brave. The post got pinned for a month. People talked about it at school. I kept my head down, but I was glad it helped someone. Now I'm in college. I'm 18, finally using apps the right way. I always ask for a video call before meeting anyone, even if they seem normal. Always meet in public, never lie about my age. I still use music in chats, still talk about design. But I keep the boundaries clearer now. They never found Thomas. His profile disappeared the same night. The cops said the name was probably fake, the plates may be stolen. But every few months, on some local forum or news board, someone posts about a similar car. Dark blue SUV, man in his 20s, quiet voice, always polite. Sometimes it's just a close call. Sometimes it's worse. On the wall above my desk, there's a framed photo. Not a selfie or anything like that. It's a traffic cam still image. The crosswalk where I jumped out, lights still red. 2 teens on bikes in the corner. My mom printed it from a city archive after the police confirmed it. She didn't say why, just left it on my desk with no note. It reminds me of what happened. Not to scare me, but to remember. A single lie, a few numbers changed on a screen, was all it took to send me somewhere dangerous. But telling the truth, even too late, is what got me home. The week I spent talking with Simon went by quickly. We met at a photography forum. Both of us liked old buildings, abandoned spaces, antique architecture. He said he had a thing for Victorian houses, and when he found out I was into them too, he lit up. He told me he owned one just outside the city. Said it was built in 1897, still had its original hardwood floors and gaslight fixtures. I was curious, obviously. When he invited me over the following Saturday to check it out and take some photos, I said yes. I packed my Nikon, a spare battery, a tripod just in case. Took a bus and then a cab to the address he gave me. The neighborhood was quiet, almost too clean. A little cul-de-sac with houses spaced out, big yards, no sidewalks. His place stood out immediately. It looked like it had been pulled straight from a black and white film. 3 stories tall, steep roof, dark green siding, and heavy wooden doors with brass handles. He greeted me at the door with a casual smile and a gray sweater that hung loose off his shoulders. Inside, the place smelled like fresh bread and lemon cleaner. Wood-paneled walls, velvet curtains, and these huge framed paintings of people I didn't recognize. Most of the furniture looked antique but well kept. I noticed everything was tidy, almost staged. He said he baked earlier that morning and offered me a slice. We ended up sitting in the living room, which had this weirdly quiet air about it, like the walls were muffling everything. A black and white noir film was playing on a projector screen he'd set up. He had an old record player in the corner spinning faint jazz. We talked a little about photography, mostly small talk, nothing deep. I took a few photos of the living room. The lighting was perfect. After a while, he said, "Want to see something interesting?" Then added, "The basement has the original stonework. Might be cool for photos." I agreed. I mean, I like that kind of stuff. And he seemed normal enough. Maybe a little stiff. As we walked through the hallway toward the back of the house, something felt off. The floor creaked differently here, like deeper. The air felt heavier, less warm. On our way to the basement door, I noticed a thick curtain covering what looked like an old archway along the right wall. It didn't match the rest of the hallway. While he fumbled with his keys, I heard a soft sound, something like a whimper. Faint, almost like a cough, but not quite. I froze. Looked at the curtain again. It barely moved. just a slight sway at the bottom, like a draft hit it. Simon didn't seem to notice. He unlocked the basement door and held it open, waiting for me to follow. I smiled, mumbled something about needing to use the bathroom first. He nodded and pointed to a door near the living room. I walked past it. Instead, I turned back down the hall when he went ahead. I moved quietly, careful not to let my camera bag bump the wall. The curtain was heavy, thick like theater drapes. I pulled it aside just enough to see a narrow doorway. The door behind it had a metal chain on the outside, looped through the handle. The wood was old, cracked, paint peeling. I leaned closer and noticed faint scratching on the door near the bottom. Then I saw them. Eyes. Wide, glassy, terrified. A girl, probably around my age, crouched low in the dim space behind the cracked door. Her mouth moved, but no sound came out. I stepped back, heart pounding, not sure what I was seeing. My first thought was she was hurt or sick or something. I looked around for a phone, anything. That's when I felt the floor creak again, this time behind me. "You get turned around?" Simon's voice was calm, almost playful. I turned, trying to keep my face neutral. "I thought I saw a mirror back here," I said. "Wanted to take a shot of it. The hallway lighting's kind of perfect." He nodded slowly, eyes locked on mine. "Ah. No mirror back here, though. You must have seen the shine from the curtain." I nodded, swallowed hard, tried to smile. "Yeah, maybe." He didn't say anything. Just looked past me at the curtain for a second, then back at me. Then he smiled again and gestured down the hall. "Come on, let's go back to the living room. The projector's probably at the good part." I followed him. The walk felt longer than before. I kept the camera bag slung on my shoulder, my hand wrapped tight around the strap. I didn't look back. We sat down on the couch again, the movie still playing. A man on screen lit a cigarette and stared out a rainy window. Simon handed me a glass of water. I set it down on the coaster without touching it. My camera rested on my lap. He was quiet now, watching the movie. I glanced at the curtain in the hallway. Still. No sound. No movement. I needed to leave, but fast enough not to spook him. I said I just remembered I had to submit a project before midnight. Told him my boss would kill me if I didn't send the files. I tried to sound annoyed, like I was pissed at myself for forgetting. He looked at me for a second, like he was thinking something over, then smiled and said, "Of course." We both stood up. I grabbed my bag, holding it tighter than before. At the door, he moved a little slower. His hand landed on the top lock, one of those old-fashioned ones that turn with a loud clack. I watched his fingers. He paused. "You sure you're okay to get home in this weather?" he asked, like it was a genuine concern. "I'll be fine," I said quickly, already stepping forward. He unlocked the door, pushed it open. Cold air rushed in. Rain hit my face immediately. I didn't wait. I stepped out fast, mumbling thanks and goodbye, not turning around again. The door shut behind me with a soft click. I didn't look back until I reached the end of the block. I walked fast, nearly jogging, soaking wet within minutes. My jacket clung to my skin. I turned a corner and spotted a small coffee shop still open. I went in, hands shaking, ordered nothing. Just stood near the bathroom and dialed 911. My voice was low, but steady. I told the dispatcher what I saw. I said there was a girl locked behind a door with a chain, that I thought she was in danger. The woman on the other end didn't doubt me. She said officers were nearby, told me to stay where I was. 15 minutes later, I saw the patrol car turn onto the street. The officers came into the cafe and asked me to repeat everything. I did. They wrote it down fast, called it in, then nodded at each other. One of them said, "We'll check it out now. Stay close." I stayed in the shop. The rain hit the windows harder. I watched them pull up to Simon's house, headlights washing over the porch. They knocked loud, waited, knocked again. A minute passed, then 2, and then I heard it. Even from the shop, over the sound of traffic and rain, I heard it. A scream, a sharp, desperate scream of a woman from inside the house. The officers forced the door open. One went in, hand on his weapon. The other called for backup. A few minutes later, more units pulled up. One officer came out with Simon, hands behind his back, cuffs already on. He wasn't saying anything. No resistance, just that blank expression. His sweater soaked through, clinging to his back. They brought the girl out shortly after. She could barely walk, supported on each side. A blanket over her shoulders. Her wrists were red, bruised, her hair tangled. Her eyes kept moving like she couldn't stop checking every corner of the street. When she saw the open sky, she just dropped her head and cried. It was her. The same eyes, the same door. She was real. Later, I found out her name was Chloe. She'd been missing for nearly a month. Reported last seen leaving work late at a bookstore 2 neighborhoods over. There had been flyers. Her parents had done interviews. I'd seen her face before without realizing it. Now she was sitting in the back of an ambulance, talking to paramedics, crying into her hands. I stood at the curb. Water soaked into my shoes. Rain ran down my face. One of the officers came over, said I'd probably saved her life. I didn't answer. Just watched them tape off the house. Flashing lights blurred in the puddles. People stood at their windows across the street, holding phones, some filming. I looked away. Over the next few weeks, I got pulled into everything. Statements, follow-ups, court dates. I was the main witness. Chloe stayed in the hospital for a while, then in therapy. She reached out to me through one of the officers. I met her for coffee a month later. She was quiet, but steady. We talked for an hour. She said she remembered hearing me walk up, remembered hoping someone would finally see her. We've stayed in touch since then. Nothing constant, just check-ins. She's trying to live again, trying to feel safe. The media turned it into a story, of course. Photos, headlines, theories. People online trying to figure out who Simon really was, what else he might have done. I stayed out of it. I didn't read the articles, didn't watch the interviews. I still don't know what he said during questioning. Doesn't matter. I still love old architecture. I still take photos of houses, quiet streets, creaky staircases. But I never go alone anymore. And I don't let charm or shared hobbies convince me to ignore warning signs. A beautiful house can still hold something awful. Behind a perfect window frame, behind a locked door, behind a curtain, darkness can wait. The last time I saw Chloe, we walked past a store that sold old metal fixtures, doorknobs, hinges, locks. She stopped and stared at a rusted chain link, the kind that loops through a door handle. Then she smiled, small and quiet, and said, "They took it off." And we kept walking. I met Lena through Hinge. Her profile said she worked at a confectionery factory, which made me imagine her surrounded by sweets all day. On our second date, she told me how she laughed when people ordered overly serious cakes, like one shaped like a lion in a suit. She said it was impossible to frost dignity onto a sponge base. She was funny in this very dry, quick way. We'd gone out 3 times before she invited me over to cook dinner at her place. It was supposed to be something simple: grilled vegetables, hummus, lemonade. Her apartment was on the 3rd floor of an older brick building just off a quiet street. It was clean and warm, smelled faintly of vanilla and cloves, probably from her clothes. There was a moon-shaped nightlight in the hallway that cast this bluish glow on the floor. I remember thinking it was kind of cozy. She wore a big sweatshirt and socks with stars on them. I brought a bag of peppers, zucchini, and mushrooms. She made some kind of dip in a small food processor that sounded like it was dying. We played some music from her phone and talked while cutting vegetables. At one point, I opened the bottle of lemonade too fast, and it foamed out all over the counter. She laughed, wiping it up with a towel, and I remember thinking how relaxed everything felt. No pressure, just two people making a mess in a small kitchen. We started cooking everything on this electric stovetop that clicked weirdly when you turned it on. It must have been just past 9 p.m. when we sat down with our plates on the couch, balancing them on our knees. The TV was off, just some music still playing low from her phone. She was telling me about a wedding cake shaped like a yacht when we both jumped at the sound. A loud bang from the front door, too loud for a neighbor just coming in or out. Before either of us could say anything, the door swung open and a man stepped inside. He didn't knock. He didn't say hi. He just walked in like he lived there. Lena froze. The guy was tall, maybe mid-30s, heavy around the shoulders. He wore a gray hoodie, but I could see his face clearly. He looked angry, not shouting yet, but breathing hard like he'd just run up the stairs. Lena stood up slowly, holding the plate with both hands. "You can't be here," she said, low and firm. He didn't answer her. His eyes shifted to me, then back to her, and then he stepped forward fast. That's when I saw the knife. Not a huge one, but sharp, with a black handle. "Put that down," I said, standing up fast. The plate dropped from my lap and cracked on the floor, roasted peppers scattering across the rug. I moved between them without thinking. He started yelling. Not words, just sounds at first. Then something like, "You think I don't know what this is?" And, "You invite people now?" He waved the knife toward me but didn't step closer yet. I reached to the side and flipped the main hallway light on. It was bright, fluorescent, and harsh. It hit him straight in the face. He squinted and cursed, lifting his free arm to shield his eyes. That gave us a second. I grabbed Lena's arm and pulled her behind me. "Go," I said. We backed toward the door. He came forward again, knife still raised, but slower now, blinking and off balance. I kept watching him, trying to make sure he didn't lunge. As soon as our backs hit the hallway wall, I pulled the front door open and we ran out. We went straight for the stairwell. Someone from across the hall opened their door, a man in a white tank top. He saw us, saw Lena clutching her phone, and without a word he moved into the hallway and held the stairwell door open wide for us. "He's got a knife," Lena said. Her voice was shaking but not high-pitched, just fast and short. She was already dialing 911 before we hit the first landing. I could hear her describing the man, her address, her name. I looked back over my shoulder. The hallway door swung shut behind us. We stopped on the second-floor landing, crouched low, and waited. Inside the apartment, we heard him shouting again. The words were clearer now, anger mixed with panic. He was breaking things. Glass shattered. Something heavy hit the wall and thudded to the floor. Lena was still on the phone. "Yes, my ex-boyfriend. He has a knife. He broke into my apartment. Please hurry." She gave the dispatcher the building number and unit. She kept her voice steady. Then came the sirens. Not close yet, but definitely coming. The sirens got louder fast. Red and blue lights flashed against the stairwell window. We stayed crouched until the front doors slammed open downstairs. Heavy boots hit the steps. I peeked over the railing and saw uniforms. Before the police reached our floor, the hallway door burst open again behind us, He was there. The knife was still in his hand, and he was shouting something I couldn't understand. I stood up, blocking Lena again, but then I heard footsteps behind him. The neighbor in the white tank top was back. He had a wooden bat in his hands, probably from under his bed or behind a door, and he didn't hesitate. He charged from behind and swung it low, catching the guy right behind his knees. The man went down hard. The knife slid across the floor. He scrambled to get up, but the neighbor shouted, "Stay down," and raised the bat again. That's when the police got there. 2 officers rushed past us, shouting commands. One of them knelt and pinned the guy's arm back. The other kicked the knife away and put a knee on his shoulder. They cuffed him fast. He was still yelling, but not fighting much anymore. The neighbor leaned against the wall, breathing hard, holding the bat like it had gotten heavier. Only then did I realize my forearm was bleeding. Not gushing, but steady. The blade must have caught me when he swung toward my side. Lena grabbed a towel from someone's kitchen and pressed it against my arm. More neighbors were out now, watching from doorways. Someone offered water. A paramedic showed up minutes later, cleaned the cut, said I'd need stitches. At the hospital, they numbed it and gave me 6. Lena sat beside the bed the whole time, holding the towel in her lap. She kept whispering, "I'm sorry," over and over. I told her to stop. It wasn't her fault. She didn't invite that. Nobody does. After I got patched up, we left the hospital around 2 a.m. I didn't want her going back to that apartment. She didn't either. So we called my aunt, who lived 20 minutes away. She answered on the second ring. Said to come. My aunt made us tea with mint and sugar. Her place was small and cluttered with ceramic birds, but it felt like a safe zone. We sat on her worn couch, the mug warm in my hands. Lena looked like she hadn't blinked in an hour. The light over the table was yellow and soft. It was quiet. That helped. The next day, Lena gave her statement. Police told us they were pressing charges, breaking and entering, assault with a deadly weapon, a few more. The guy wasn't getting out anytime soon. She had a no-contact order. They'd call us when the court date came. We didn't go back to her apartment for a while. When we finally did, we packed most of her stuff in a few boxes. She said she didn't want to sleep there again. Too many broken pieces, too many things she didn't want to remember. The little nightlight, shaped like a moon, came with us. We set it up in my hallway. A week later, we started going to safety classes. Things like personal boundaries, situational awareness, self-defense. It wasn't about fear, not exactly. It was about feeling like we had some kind of control again. We learned how to stay calm, how to move fast, how to use our voices. The instructor didn't sugarcoat anything. That was good. My stitches came out a few days after. The scar was thin and pink at first. It's darker now. It cuts across my forearm like a single line drawn with purpose. I don't cover it. It's not huge, but it reminds me that things happen fast, and that safety is something you have to work for. One moment you're laughing about fizzy lemonade. The next, you're pressing a towel to your own blood. Lena signed up for a pastry course 2 months later. She said she wanted to turn cakes into more than just work. Now she talks about textures and balance like they're science. I like seeing her focused like that. Her hands are steady again. The neighbor who helped? His name's Alex. We didn't know it before, but now we do. He jokes about the bat incident whenever we see him. Said he's thinking about framing the thing like a trophy. I think he's half serious. The moon nightlight still turns on every evening at our place. Same spot in the hallway, casting the same bluish glow on the wooden floor. We don't talk much about that night anymore. There's nothing new to say. But the light switches on automatically around 8 p.m. And when it does, the shadows don't move. They just stay where they belong. We met at this minimalist cafe near my office. White tiles, matte black chairs, the kind of place that looked more like a tech showroom than somewhere to eat. Ryan had picked it. He was one of those quiet IT guys from a shared Slack channel. Seemed decent enough. He was polite, dressed neat, said things like, "Optimize your experience," unironically. Not really my type, but I thought, okay, one coffee can't hurt. He ordered a black Americano, no sugar. I got a tea. Conversation was flat. He talked a lot about system architecture, network security. He wasn't rude, just off, like he was trying to sell me something the whole time. I nodded along, checked the time more than once. When I glanced at my phone, he leaned in and said, "Your Android's running heavy background tasks. Want me to tweak it?" I hesitated, but he sounded confident. It's his thing, right? I handed him the phone. He plugged in a small USB-C device from his keychain and started tapping. Less than 2 minutes. Then he said, "There you go. Cleared your cache. Optimized startup. Disabled redundant location pings." I thanked him, took the phone back, and that was pretty much it. No spark, no vibe. We left without hugging. I didn't expect to see him again. The next morning, I was brushing my teeth when my phone buzzed. Location updated. Near home. It said in a strange new format. Not like Google or Samsung's default notifications. I ignored it, assumed a system glitch. Maybe from whatever Ryan did. The day went on. Emails, Slack messages, calls. Then again, around noon. Location updated, near office entrance. This time, it pinged 3 times in a row. I checked my location settings. Everything looked normal. Nothing new in the app list. Battery usage didn't show any rogue programs. I thought maybe the update Ryan did messed with the OS somehow. I didn't want to reach out to him, didn't want to start anything. But I kept noticing these alerts. Each one was creepily specific. Later that week, I was at the grocery store, halfway through self-checkout when I felt someone standing behind me. I turned and saw Ryan. Black hoodie, same blank expression. He nodded like we were old friends. "Didn't expect to see you here," he said. I gave a polite smile and moved fast. Just coincidence, I told myself. Next day, same thing. I was waiting for the metro when he appeared across the platform. No acknowledgement, just stood there watching his phone. He didn't board my train. He didn't wave. But he was there. Then the messages started coming. "Cool spot. Haven't been on this street before. Lunch at that Vietnamese place again? Parking near your building is rough." He wasn't replying to anything. He was sending these out of the blue every time I changed location. I blocked the number, but somehow they kept coming. New numbers, same tone. Always the same structure. Short, location-specific, casual but knowing. I felt my hands shake just reading them. I went into my phone's developer settings and noticed something I hadn't seen before. A new system profile called User Sys RK. It didn't belong to any app I installed. No way to delete it. No admin override. Just sitting there, buried deep, running in the background. I texted my friend Marta, who works in cyber forensics. She called me right away. "Did you give anyone your phone recently?" I told her about Ryan. Her voice dropped. "You need a full diagnostic. Wipe your phone if you can. Don't wait." She gave me the number of a guy she trusts, does freelance diagnostics. I booked an appointment that night. Before leaving the apartment, I shut off my phone completely. Still, when I got outside, Ryan was there, across the street, just standing under a streetlight. He didn't move, just stared. The office was on the 7th floor of a mixed-use building, sandwiched between a dentist and a yoga studio. The guy Marta recommended, Anton, was in his late 30s, looked tired but focused. He barely said hello before plugging my phone into his workstation and launching a diagnostic shell. I watched the screen flicker with lines of text I didn't understand. He didn't talk for about 20 minutes. Then he leaned back. There's a remote admin tool installed, hidden inside what looks like a diagnostic service. It's disguised well. Whoever set this up knew exactly what they were doing. He showed me a line of code referencing constant GPS polling, remote SMS read-write access, microphone triggers, and more. I felt cold. All of it pointed back to the moment Ryan optimized my phone. Anton pulled the full log data, timestamps, permissions used, external IPs. He exported it onto a flash drive and handed it to me. Take this to the police. Don't wait. I went straight to the local precinct that night. They logged everything, copied the drive, filed an incident report. An officer took my statement. As I sat in the waiting area, my phone buzzed. This time it had been reset and cleaned, but I'd left it on to monitor if anything else happened. The message read, "New route looks good on you." I showed it to the desk officer. He looked over my shoulder at the timestamp. "This guy's watching you now?" He called someone over immediately. While I waited, the staff pulled security footage from outside the station. In one of the street cam feeds, Ryan's car circled the block twice, slow. He never stopped, never got out, just passed by and kept going. They flagged his plates. A bolo was issued within the hour. The next day, around 2:15 p.m., police found him parked outside a shopping mall near my apartment complex. He was sitting in the driver's seat, laptop open, hotspot active. They approached, called his name, told him to step out. He complied without a word. Inside the car, they found multiple folders on his laptop. Names, photos, full GPS logs. Mine was just one of many. Some directories had been recently opened. Others went back months. Different cities, different women. Some files even had routine schedules cross-referenced with maps. They brought him in for questioning. The logs from my phone, combined with the recovered data, formed a pretty clear picture. Unlawful surveillance, digital intrusion, stalking. I sat across from a detective while they reviewed the evidence. He kept pausing to shake his head. He's methodical, patient. This wasn't a one-time thing. He's done this before. The case moved fast. With the volume of data and the detailed logs Anton pulled, charges were filed within days. The judge reviewed the initial claims and issued a no-contact order immediately. Ryan's attorney didn't say much during the first hearing, just asked for time to review the technical evidence. The second hearing confirmed what we already knew. Ryan had installed custom spyware designed to hide from Android's built-in security scans. The geolocation files and messaging history showed clear patterns of behavior. He had tracked me across more than 30 locations. Several other women filed their own complaints once the news broke. Eventually, the court accepted the expert testimony. I didn't need to speak much, just confirm what happened, walk through the dates, the messages. The judge read aloud from some of the message logs. There was a long silence in the courtroom after that. Ryan didn't look up once. By the time sentencing came around, he had been charged with unlawful surveillance, identity interference, and possession of unauthorized digital access tools. His lawyer asked for rehabilitation. The judge ordered mandatory digital ethics training, probation, and a long-term restraining order. Some of us thought it wasn't enough. I replaced my phone with a clean model, full firmware wipe, no recovery. The OS was locked down with endpoint monitoring. Every 3 days, I get a silent reminder. Review permissions. It stays there until I check. I started running small workshops at the co-working space. Simple sessions on phone security, privacy settings, app audits, just the basics, but enough to catch most things before they grow into something worse. Marta helped me set up templates for others to use. People started showing up. Ryan's conviction didn't fix everything, but it set a precedent. A digital victory, at least on paper. The harder part was deleting his presence from my mental space, rerouting routines, checking door cameras twice, learning how to breathe when shadows lingered a second too long. Still, I consider this a clean win. Not just removing the virus from my phone, but flashing the boundaries around my life. Clear, visible, locked tight. We met at the city market. Just a random afternoon, I was picking up some bread and vegetables, and she asked me about the stall's honey jars. We ended up chatting for 20 minutes, then walked around the market together. It felt casual. She was easy to talk to, sharp, and had this dry humor that kind of caught me off guard. She mentioned she was new in town, had moved a few weeks ago for work. By the end of that day, we exchanged numbers and planned to grab coffee the next morning. First date went smooth. We talked more, had coffee, walked a bit by the river. Nothing intense, just easy. A few days later, we had dinner. She offered to pay half, said she doesn't like depending on anyone. I respected that. Over dinner, I told her directly. I wasn't looking for anything serious. I had just gotten out of a long relationship and didn't want to dive into something heavy. She nodded, smiled, said that's totally fine. She wasn't either. Said she appreciated the honesty. I thought that was that. But the messages started the next day. At first, just casual. Hope your day's going okay. What are you up to? That pizza place was great, but they didn't stop. I'd wake up and see 10 texts, random things, pictures of her cat, what she made for breakfast, a meme, a screenshot of a song she said reminded her of me. It wasn't bad, just constant. I slowed down on replies, thought she'd get the message. Then came the late-night calls, always after midnight, sometimes 3 or 4 times in one night. When I picked up, she wouldn't even say anything normal. Once she just said, "I had a dream you died," then hung up. Another time she just breathed into the phone for a full minute. I stopped answering. I told her firmly that this wasn't okay. She apologized, said she was having trouble sleeping, that she was sorry for bothering me. I blocked her number that night. 2 days later, I saw her car parked across the street from where I work. It was her, sitting in the driver's seat, phone in hand. She didn't wave or try to get my attention, just stayed there. I went outside like I was making a call and watched from the corner. She was filming me, just slowly moving her phone as I walked back and forth by the windows. I went back inside, told my manager I wasn't feeling well and left out the back exit. Didn't go home right away, just drove around for an hour. Next day at work, same thing. Her car, same spot. She didn't get out, just sat there. That night, I got home around 8. My apartment's on the 2nd floor. Windows face the parking lot. I turned off all the lights, sat on the floor by the window, and waited. Sure enough, around 9:30, her car rolled slowly into the lot and parked directly across from my unit. She didn't get out, just turned off the engine and sat. I texted her. "Why are you outside my apartment?" She replied instantly. "GPS messed up. Was going somewhere else." I hit record on my phone and called her. Tried to stay calm. I asked again, "Why are you parked under my window?" Her tone was flat. "I told you, the GPS. I didn't even realize this was your building." I asked her to leave. She paused, then said, "You don't need to talk to me like that. I'm just trying to figure out what went wrong." I hung up and watched. She stayed another 10 minutes, then drove off. I changed the lock on my front door the next morning. I had 2 spare keys before. One I kept on my desk. The other used to be in the small box under the doormat in case I forgot mine. That one was gone. I didn't think about it until the next night. I went to bed around midnight. Everything was quiet. I live alone, no pets. I remember checking that the door was locked and bolting the window in the kitchen. Around 3 a.m., I woke up suddenly. No sound, no dreams. I just opened my eyes like something switched on in my brain. She was standing in my bedroom doorway. I froze. She wasn't moving, just standing there, holding something in her left hand. It was the spare key. I didn't think. I shouted as loud as I could and kicked the lamp next to my bed toward her. It crashed on the floor. She bolted. By the time I got out of bed, she was halfway out the window in the living room. Cops came the next morning. I didn't sleep. Just sat on the floor with the lights on, waiting. I told them everything. Showed them the phone recording. Showed where the lamp broke, where she got out through the window. One of the officers walked around the outside of the building and pointed out muddy footprints right under the sill. They matched the ones on my carpet. I filed a report, gave them her full name, the car description, plate number. They took it seriously, probably because of the break-in. I changed the locks again, this time with digital ones that needed a code. I bought motion sensors, stuck one inside the entryway, one in the hall. Every beep at night made me sit up straight, even when it was just the system checking itself. A week later, I found an envelope at my door. No stamp, no writing. Just a small brown envelope. Inside was a single photo, taken from outside my building. My window was lit, curtain half drawn. Written across the bottom, in red ink, was one word: cozy. No fingerprints. I called the police again, added it to the report. The officer took the photo, asked if she'd been back. I said I didn't know. I started going out less. When I did, I'd walk past my car twice, circle the block before getting in. I parked in different spots every day. She didn't text again, didn't call. But the silence felt worse, like she was waiting for something. 2 weeks after the photo, I noticed my car alarm chirped when I got close, but I hadn't set it. I opened the app connected to the GPS tracker I'd installed after the break-in. There was an alert from 3 nights earlier. Hood opened, 2:11 a.m. I hadn't opened it. I called the police, gave them the tracker logs. They took it seriously this time, finally. That night they picked her up in a parking lot near my building. She was sitting in her car again. They searched the vehicle. In her trunk was a plastic bin. Inside, dozens of printed photos. All of me. At work, at the market, walking to the gym. Pictures of my front door. One where I'm sitting in my living room, lights on, reading. Taken from outside. There was also a flash drive. It had folders labeled by date. Hundreds of pictures. A few audio recordings. GPS logs of where my car had been parked, times she'd followed me. The police gave me a restraining order. She was required to attend weekly counseling sessions. I asked if that meant she'd stop. The officer just looked at me and said, "We've done what we can." I got a letter a week later with the court's official ruling. No contact, 300 feet minimum distance, mandatory therapy. I read it 3 times. Still didn't feel like enough. For a while, I left the papers spread out on my kitchen table. I'd reread them when I started to doubt if any of it had really happened. The words were all cold, plain. Respondent is prohibited. Shall not approach. Legal sentences like walls I was supposed to trust. But doors have locks. Walls have windows. It's been 3 months now. I don't open my blinds without listening first. I pause at the door and check the peephole twice before leaving. Sometimes I sit in the dark and watch the street below for long stretches, just to make sure no one's watching. I gave my brother the only spare key. He keeps it in a small safe in his house. Says he'll only give it back if I ask in person. The photo with cozy written on it is in an evidence folder at the precinct. They let me see it once more before filing it away. The officer held it like it was something poisonous. That original key, the one she used, I framed it. It hangs by the front door now, sealed under glass. Not because I want to remember her, but because I want to remember what can happen when you trust too quickly. It's the only decoration in my entryway. I've started going on dates again. Nothing serious. Just coffee in public places, walks in parks when the sun's still out. I don't bring anyone home. I don't give out my address. The balance is fragile, but it holds. I keep my door locked, not just with the deadbolt, but with the question of who gets to hold the key.